I never thought the man who abandoned me when I was pregnant would come back after 5 years, not with an apology, but with a criminal empire and guns in his vest. That was the moment Elara Voss's life shattered for the second time. The poor boy she once loved had become something far more dangerous. And when he discovered the existence of a 4-year-old daughter he didn't even know existed, nothing could stop him from reclaiming what he had lost. Follow this story to the very end. Like and leave a comment with the city you're watching in. I want to know how far this story has come. The snow came down like shattered glass, cutting through the December wind that tore down 7th Avenue with the kind of cold that made your lungs ache. Elara Voss was late. Again. She shoved through the side entrance of Raphael's, the kind of upscale restaurant where she'd never be able to afford a meal on her own dime. And the blast of warm air hit her face like a slap. Her fingers were numb inside her threadbare gloves. Her boots tracked slush across the marble floor. "You're 12 minutes late, Elara." Marcus, the floor manager, didn't even look up from his tablet. His voice was flat, bored, the kind of tone that said he'd already written her up in his head. The bus broke down on Madison. She peeled off her coat, shoved it into her locker, tied her apron with fingers that still wouldn't bend right. Won't happen again. It happened 3 times this month. She didn't answer. What was the point? He wasn't wrong. The truth was, the bus system in this city was a nightmare. Her alarm clock was dying, and her babysitter, Mrs. Chen from 4B, was getting too old to watch Rosalie past midnight. But none of that mattered to Marcus. All that mattered was whether the tables got served on time and whether he had to explain another gap in the schedule to management. She grabbed her order pad and pushed through the swinging doors into the main dining room. The restaurant was beautiful in the way that rich places always were, all low amber lighting, polished wood, and cloth napkins folded into shapes that probably had French names. Piano music drifted from somewhere near the bar. The kind of place where people came to celebrate promotions or anniversaries or close deals that would buy and sell her entire neighborhood. Elara had worked here for 8 months. She knew the menu backward. She knew which tables tipped and which ones didn't. She knew how to smile through exhaustion and make her voice sound pleasant even when her feet were screaming and her daughter's daycare bill was 3 weeks overdue. Table 12 was near the back corner, private, dim. She'd served it 100 times. She grabbed the water pitcher, balanced it against her hip, and crossed the dining room without looking up. Her mind was already running through the list of things she still had to do tonight. Pick up Rosalie by 1, stop at the 24-hour pharmacy for the cough syrup she'd been putting off, check if there was enough milk for breakfast, maybe sleep for 4 hours if she was lucky. She reached the table and started to pour. "Good evening. I'll be your server tonight." The words died in her throat. She knew that profile. She knew the line of that jaw, the angle of those shoulders, the way his hands rested flat on the table like he was holding something down. She knew him the way you know the shape of a scar, the kind of recognition that doesn't come from memory but from something deeper and more permanent. Lucien Moretti. The water pitcher slipped, just a fraction, just enough that water sloshed over the rim of the glass and pooled on the white tablecloth. "Shit!" Her voice cracked. She grabbed a napkin, started blotting, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the cloth. "I'm sorry, Elara." That voice. Lower than she remembered, rougher, like gravel scraped across glass. She forced herself to look up. 5 years. 5 years since he'd disappeared from her life without a phone call, without a letter, without a single goddamn explanation. 5 years since she'd woken up alone in his apartment with $20 on the counter and a note that said, "I'm sorry," in his terrible handwriting. 5 years since she'd taken the pregnancy test in a gas station bathroom and realized she was going to raise their daughter by herself. He looked different. The boy she'd known had been all sharp edges and reckless energy. Torn jeans, motor oil under his nails, a smile that made her forget she was supposed to be smart about things. That boy was gone. The man sitting in front of her now wore a suit that probably cost more than her rent. His hair was shorter, styled. There was a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before, something cold and calculating that made her stomach twist. And there were 2 men standing against the wall behind him. Security. She hadn't even noticed them at first. Big, silent, the kind of guys who didn't need to say anything to make a threat. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I could ask you the same thing." He leaned back in his chair, studying her like she was something he was trying to figure out how to take apart. You work here? Obviously. How long? Why does it matter? Answer the question, Elara. There was something in his tone that made her skin prickle. Not quite a threat, not quite a command. Something in between. She hated how much it still affected her, that voice, the way he said her name like he still had the right to. 8 months, she said. Not that it's any of your business. Everything about you is my business. You gave up that right 5 years ago. Something flickered across his face. It was fast, gone before she could name it, but it looked almost like pain. Then the mask was back, smooth and unreadable. I had reasons. I don't care about your reasons. You should. I stopped caring about you a long time ago, Lucien. It was a lie. They both knew it. But she said it anyway because the alternative was admitting that she'd spent 5 years trying to forget him and failing every single time. That there were nights when Rosalie fell asleep and Elara would lie in the dark and wonder where he'd gone, what had happened, whether he was even still alive. That she hated him and missed him in equal measure and didn't know how to reconcile those two things into something that made sense. He reached into his jacket. She flinched before she could stop herself. Lucien paused. His eyes went dark. I'm not going to hurt you. Then what are you going to do? He pulled out a business card, set it on the table between them. Heavy cardstock, gold lettering, an address in the financial district. We need to talk. No. Elara, I said no. She dropped the napkin on the table, turned to leave. Enjoy your meal. His hand caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. The touch burned. Please. She hated that word in his mouth. Hated how it made her pause when she should have been walking away. Hated how her body still remembered what it felt like to be close to him, even after everything. Let go of me. He did. Immediately. His hand dropped like she'd burned him. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask me for anything. I know. His jaw tightened. But I'm asking anyway. She should have walked away. Should have told Marcus she was sick, grabbed her coat, and run as far from this restaurant as the bus system would take her. Should have done anything except stand there looking at the boy who'd destroyed her life and turned into something she didn't recognize. Instead, she heard herself say, 5 minutes. That's it. Thank you. She didn't wait for him to say anything else. She turned and walked toward the break room, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Her hands were still shaking. Her throat felt tight. Behind her, she could feel his eyes tracking her across the dining room like a spotlight. The break room was empty. She leaned against the wall, pressed her palms flat against the cold concrete, tried to breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. 5 years. 5 years of silence. And now he just showed up like nothing had changed? Like he had the right to walk back into her life and demand her time? The door opened behind her. You've got 3 minutes left, she said without turning around. Where is she? Elara's blood went cold. She spun around. What? Lucien stood in the doorway, backlit by the harsh fluorescent lights of the hallway. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes, something desperate and furious and barely restrained. Don't play stupid with me, Elara. I know. You don't know anything. I know you were pregnant when I left. His voice dropped to something just above a whisper. I know you didn't get rid of it. I know you have a daughter. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to tell me the truth. She couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in. Where is she? How did you answer the question? She's none of your business. Lucien crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could see the muscle ticking in his jaw, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and unfamiliar. Nothing like the cheap body spray he used to wear. Is she mine? Elara's throat closed. She wanted to lie, wanted to tell him to go to hell, that Rosalie was hers and hers alone, that he'd given up the right to know the second he walked out that door 5 years ago. But the truth was written all over his face. He already knew. He just needed to hear her say it. Yes. The word hung in the air between them like a knife. Lucien exhaled. It sounded like he'd been holding his breath for 5 years. His hands curled into fists at his sides. For a second, she thought he might put his fist through the wall. Instead, he just stood there, every muscle in his body locked tight, staring at her like she'd just confirmed the existence of something he'd been afraid to hope for. "What's her name?" "Lucien." "What is her name?" "Rosalie." He closed his eyes. Something raw and broken flickered across his face. "How old?" "4. She just turned 4 in October." "Does she know about me?" "What do you think?" "Does she know?" His voice cracked on the last word. "No." Elara's hands were shaking again. "No, she doesn't know. Because what was I supposed to tell her? That her father disappeared before she was born? That I don't know if you're alive or dead, or in prison somewhere? That you left me with $20 and a note? I had no choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when the alternative is getting you killed." The words hit her like a slap. She stared at him, trying to process what he just said, but nothing made sense. Nothing about this made sense. "What are you talking about?" Lucien ran a hand through his hair, and for just a second, she saw a flash of the boy she used to know. The one who used to sit on the roof of his building at 3 in the morning, smoking cigarettes, and telling her about all the places he wanted to take her someday. Then it was gone, buried under whatever he'd become. "I can't explain it here." "Then don't." "Elara, please." "Stop saying my name like that." Her voice broke. "Stop acting like you have the right to walk back into my life and demand answers. You left. You made that choice. Whatever consequences came from that, whatever guilt you're carrying, that's on you, not me." "I know." His voice was barely audible. "I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to understand. I'm just asking you to let me meet her." "Absolutely not. She's my daughter." "She's my daughter." Elara's voice turned sharp. "I'm the one who threw up every morning for 4 months. I'm the one who worked 2 jobs while I was 8 months pregnant because I couldn't afford to stop. I'm the one who held her when she cried and sang to her when she couldn't sleep and taught her how to tie her shoes. You don't get to show up now and claim her just because you finally decided to care." "I've always cared." "Then where were you?" The question hung between them, heavy and unanswerable. Lucien's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. "I was trying to stay alive long enough to come back." What does that even mean? "It means I made enemies, dangerous ones, the kind of people who don't stop until they've burned everything you love to the ground. I left because staying would have put a target on your back. I stayed away because I thought that was the only way to keep you safe." "And now?" "Now I'm not the one in danger anymore." His eyes were dark, unreadable. "They are." A chill ran down her spine. There was something in the way he said it, flat, factual, like he was commenting on the weather. No emotion, no hesitation, just cold certainty. "What are you, Lucien?" "Someone you don't want to know." "Then why are you here?" "Because I found out about Rosalie 3 days ago, and I haven't been able to think about anything else since." His voice turned raw. "Because for 5 years, I told myself I made the right choice. And now I find out I have a daughter who doesn't even know I exist. Because I've spent half a decade clawing my way through hell, and the only thing that kept me going was the idea that maybe, someday, I could come back to you." "Well, you're too late." "I know. I don't love you anymore." "I know that too." "Then what do you want from me?" Lucien looked at her for a long moment. The ambient noise of the restaurant filtered through the walls. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone ordering wine in a voice that carried. Normal sounds, the kind of sounds that belong to a world where men didn't show up after 5 years with security guards and suits that cost more than cars. "I want to meet my daughter," he said finally. "I want to know what her favorite color is, what she likes for breakfast, whether she's scared of the dark. I want to know if she has my eyes or your smile. I want to be her father, Elara, even if I have no idea how to do it, even if I don't deserve it." "You don't." "I know. And I can't just let you walk into her life and turn everything upside down. I'm not asking you to." He pulled out another card, pressed it into her hand. "Think about it. Take as long as you need. But when you're ready, call me." She looked down at the card, the same heavy cardstock, the same gold lettering, a phone number written in pen across the bottom in handwriting she still recognized. And if I'm never ready? Something dark flickered through his eyes. Then I'll wait. He turned toward the door, and she should have let him go. Should have let him walk out of her life again and never looked back. Should have thrown the card in the trash and gone back to pretending the last 20 minutes hadn't happened. Instead, she heard herself say, "Lucien." He stopped, didn't turn around, just waited. "If you hurt her," her voice shook. "If you disappoint her, if you walk out on her the way you walked out on me, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. I don't care what you've become or how dangerous you think you are. Nothing you've seen out there will compare to what I'll do to you if you break my daughter's heart." He looked back over his shoulder. The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Not happy exactly, but something close to pride. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Then he was gone, and Elara was alone in the break room with a business card burning a hole in her palm and the feeling that her entire life had just tilted off its axis. She didn't call him that night, or the next night, or the night after that. She went through the motions of her life like she was underwater. Daycare drop-off, morning shift at the cafe, afternoon shift at Raphael's, picking up Rosalie with 15 minutes to spare before the late fee kicked in. Bath time, dinner, bedtime stories. The whole routine that she'd built over 4 years of single motherhood. Rosalie didn't notice anything was wrong. She was 4. Her world consisted of stuffed animals and cartoons and the elaborate games she made up where her toys went on adventures to places Elara couldn't afford to take her in real life. But at night, when Rosalie was asleep and the apartment was quiet except for the radiator clanking and the sound of the couple upstairs fighting in muffled shouts, Elara would pull out the business card and stare at it. The number sat in her phone for 6 days before she called it. She told herself she was doing it for Rosalie. That every kid deserved to know their father, even if that father was complicated and dangerous and maybe a little broken. That it wasn't fair to keep them apart just because she was scared. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. She wanted to see him again. Not because she loved him, not because she'd forgiven him, but because there was still a part of her, buried under years of hurt and survival and exhaustion, that needed to know what had happened to the boy who used to kiss her in the rain and promise her the world. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Elara. No greeting, no surprise. Just her name, like he'd been expecting this call. "Saturday," she said. 2 o'clock, Riverside Park near the fountain. Don't be late." "I won't." "And Lucien, if you bring those security guys, I'm leaving." There was a pause. "Okay. I mean it. I believe you." His voice softened just slightly. "Thank you." She hung up before he could say anything else. Saturday came too fast. Elara spent Friday night trying on clothes she couldn't afford to replace, braiding and rebraiding her hair, rehearsing conversations in her head that sounded stupid the second she said them out loud. She didn't sleep, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell she was doing. By Saturday morning, she'd almost talked herself out of it a dozen times. But Rosalie was already dressed in her favorite purple coat, bouncing around the apartment asking when they were going to the park, and Elara couldn't bring herself to cancel. The park was crowded despite the cold. Families with strollers, teenagers throwing a football, an old man feeding the ducks from a paper bag. Elara kept one hand on Rosalie's shoulder as they walked toward the fountain, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. He was already there. Lucien stood near the fountain with his hands in his pockets, watching the water arc and fall in crystalline patterns. He'd dressed down. Jeans, a dark coat, nothing flashy, but he still stood out. There was something about the way he held himself, the way people instinctively gave him space without quite knowing why. Rosalie tugged on Elara's sleeve. "Mama, who's that?" Elara's throat went dry. "That's someone I used to know." "Is he nice?" "I don't know anymore," she thought. But what she said was, "We're about to find out." They crossed the remaining distance. Lucien turned as they approached, and the expression on his face when he saw Rosalie nearly broke Elara's heart. He looked terrified. Not the cold, dangerous man who'd walked into the restaurant a week ago. Not the person who'd made vague threats about enemies and violence. Just a man looking at his daughter for the first time, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to breathe. Rosalie, for her part, stared up at him with the kind of fearless curiosity only 4-year-olds possessed. "Hi," she said. "You're really tall." Lucien's mouth twitched. "Hi, you're really purple." Rosalie giggled, holding out the edges of her coat. "It's my favorite color. Do you have a favorite color?" "I think it might be purple now." She beamed. Elara's chest ached. "Rosalie," she said quietly, "this is Lucien. He's an old friend of mine." Lucien's eyes flicked to hers, something unreadable passing through them. But all he said was, "It's nice to meet you, Rosalie. Do you want to see the ducks?" Rosalie was already tugging him toward the edge of the pond. "Mama never lets me feed them, but maybe you can convince her." "I don't think I'm in a position to convince your mom of anything." "Why not?" "Because she's a lot smarter than I am." Rosalie considered this seriously. "She is really smart. She knows, like, everything." Elara found herself smiling despite everything. She followed a few steps behind as Rosalie dragged Lucien toward the water, chattering about school and her stuffed rabbit and the birthday party she'd gone to last week where there was a bouncy castle shaped like a dragon. Lucien listened to every word like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. And watching him crouch down to Rosalie's level, answering her questions with a patience Elara didn't know he had, something inside her cracked. This was what they could have had, should have had, the three of them, together, before everything went wrong. For just a second, she let herself imagine it. An alternate timeline where Lucien never left, where they figured things out, where Rosalie grew up with 2 parents instead of one exhausted mother trying to be enough for both of them. Then reality crashed back in, cold and sharp, because the man kneeling beside her daughter wasn't the boy she'd fallen in love with. He was something else now, something dangerous. And whatever life he'd built in the last 5 years, it wasn't the kind of life that had room for a 4-year-old girl who liked purple coats and bedtime stories. "Mama," Rosalie called out, "Lucien says he can teach me to skip stones, can he?" Elara opened her mouth to answer, and that's when she saw them. 2 men, standing near the edge of the tree line, watching. They were trying to be subtle, hands in pockets, faces turned slightly away. But Elara had spent 5 years working in restaurants, learning to read people, learning to sense when something was wrong. These men didn't belong here. They weren't feeding ducks or playing with their kids or jogging past. They were just watching. Watching Lucien. Watching Rosalie. Her blood turned to ice. "Lucien." Her voice came out sharp. He looked up immediately, something in his expression shifting the second he saw her face. He followed her gaze toward the tree line, and his entire body went rigid. "Take her." His voice was low, controlled, nothing like the patient tone he'd been using with Rosalie. "Take her and go home. Right now." "What's happening?" "Elara, please." She grabbed Rosalie's hand. "Come on, baby. We need to go." "But we just got here," Rosalie protested. "Now, Rosalie." Something in her mother's voice made Rosalie stop arguing. Elara pulled her toward the park exit, walking fast but not quite running, her heart hammering in her chest. She glanced back once. Lucien was already walking toward the men in the tree line, and the look on his face made her stomach drop. She didn't see what happened next. But that night, after Rosalie was asleep, and Elara was sitting alone in her kitchen with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, she couldn't drink. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They won't bother you again. I'm sorry. I'll stay away." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "It's too late for that." And she meant it in more ways than one. Because whatever she'd been telling herself about keeping Rosalie safe, about maintaining boundaries, about not letting Lucien back into their lives, it was already over. The second he'd looked at their daughter, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, it was over. The second those men had shown up in the park, it was over. Elara Voss had spent 5 years building a life out of nothing, raising her daughter alone, surviving on willpower and stubbornness, and the kind of strength that comes from having no other choice. But now Lucien Moretti was back, and whether she liked it or not, everything was about to change. The text sat on her phone for 3 days like a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. "They won't bother you again. I'm sorry. I'll stay away." Elara read it so many times she could recite it in her sleep. She'd type out responses and delete them. Call him a liar. Tell him to go to hell. Ask him who those men were. Ask him what he'd done to make them disappear. But she never sent anything, because part of her, the part that still remembered what it felt like to be 22 and stupid and in love with a boy who kissed like he was trying to prove something, didn't want him to stay away. And that terrified her more than the men in the park ever could. Rosalie asked about him every day. When can we see Lucien again? Is he coming back? Does he like dinosaurs? Because I really like dinosaurs now. Elara deflected. Made excuses. Said maybe, said we'll see, said eat your breakfast, baby. But Rosalie was 4, not stupid. She knew when her mother was lying. On the 4th day, Elara's phone rang at 2 in the morning. She jerked awake, heart already racing, fumbling for the phone on her nightstand. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail and rolled back over and pretended it was a wrong number. Instead, she answered. Hello? Are you watching the news? Lucien's voice was rough, like he'd been awake for days. What? No, I was sleeping like a normal person. Turn it on. Channel 7. Lucien, what? Just do it, Elara. She threw off the covers, padded into the living room, grabbed the remote. The TV flickered to life. Channel 7. Late night news. A reporter standing outside a warehouse, police lights strobing red and blue across her face. Federal agents raiding what sources describe as a major distribution hub for illegal imports. At least 14 arrests have been made so far, with officials promising more to come as the investigation continues. The operation, which has been ongoing for months, is believed to be connected to organized crime networks operating throughout the city. Elara's stomach dropped. What is this? That warehouse belonged to the people who were watching you in the park. Jesus Christ. Past tense, belonged. They don't own anything anymore. She muted the TV, pressed her palm against her forehead. Did you do this? I made some calls. Some calls. Her voice came out flat. You made some calls and an entire criminal operation just, what, collapses overnight? I have friends in useful places. Friends. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean you have leverage? You mean you know where the bodies are buried? Silence on the other end. Lucien, what the hell are you? I told you. Someone you don't want to know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She sat down on the couch, still holding the phone to her ear, watching the silent images flicker across the screen. Men in handcuffs, evidence bags, the warehouse cordoned off with yellow tape. You can't just do things like this. You can't just make people disappear because they looked at me wrong. They weren't just looking, Elara. They were cataloging, taking photos, figuring out your routine, your schedule, where you lived. His voice dropped to something dangerous. They were building a file on my daughter. The way he said my daughter made her chest tight. So you had them arrested. I had them removed. That's the same thing. No. There was an edge to his voice now, something sharp and cold. It's not. Arrested means they have lawyers. Arrested means they can make bail and be back on the street in 48 hours. Removed means they won't be a problem again. Elara's blood went cold. What did you do? What I had to. Lucien, they were going to use her against me. Do you understand that? They were going to take a 4-year-old child and use her as leverage in a game she has no business being part of. His breathing was harsh now, ragged. So I did what any father would do. I protected her. By destroying their lives. By making sure they couldn't destroy hers. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the fact that the man on the other end of the phone had just casually admitted to, what? Ruining people? Threatening them? Something worse? I need you to be honest with me, she said finally. Right now. No deflecting, no cryptic bullshit. What are you involved in? Another pause, longer this time. I run a business. What kind of business? The kind that operates in gray areas. Lucien. Import-export, luxury goods, real estate, hotels, investments. He rattled them off like he was reading from a resume. All legitimate on paper. And off paper? Off paper is where things get complicated. Try me. She heard him exhale, long and slow. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost tired. When I left 5 years ago, I had nothing. No money, no connections, no future. Just a lot of people who wanted me dead because of debts my father left behind when he OD'd in a motel room. The words came out flat, factual. I did what I had to do to survive. Made deals with people I shouldn't have made deals with. Took jobs that paid well and didn't ask questions. Worked my way up until I wasn't the one taking orders anymore. So, you're a criminal. I'm a businessman who understands how the real world works. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. You just don't like it. Elara closed her eyes, pressed her fingers against her temples. I can't have this in my life. I can't have Rosalie around. Whatever this is. Then what do you want me to do, Elara? Walk away? Pretend I never found out about her? His voice cracked. I can't do that. I've already lost 5 years. I'm not losing any more. You don't get to decide that. Neither do you. She's my daughter too. A daughter you abandoned before she was even born. I didn't abandon you. The words came out hard, angry. I left to keep you alive. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. You have no idea what I gave up, what I had to do. Then tell me! She was shouting now, didn't care that it was 2 a.m, didn't care that Mrs. Chen could probably hear her through the walls. Stop talking in circles and tell me the truth for once in your goddamn life. Silence. Then quietly, they would have killed you. The words hung in the air like smoke. My father's debts didn't die with him. The people he owed, they wanted blood. They wanted payment. And when they found out about you, when they figured out you were the one thing I actually cared about, he stopped, started again. I had a choice. I could stay and watch them hurt you to get to me, or I could leave and make them think I didn't care, that you were nothing, just another girl. Elara's throat closed. You left to protect me. I left because I loved you too much to let you die for my father's mistakes. She wanted to hate him for that. Wanted to scream that he should have told her, should have trusted her, should have let her make her own choices. But the words wouldn't come. Because underneath the anger and the hurt and the 5 years of questions, there was something else. He'd loved her enough to break both their hearts. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. Why didn't you just explain? Because you would have tried to come with me. Or worse, you would have stayed and waited. And either way, you would have been in danger. He paused. I needed you to hate me. It was the only way to keep you safe. Well, congratulations. It worked. I know. The silence stretched between them, heavy and complicated. Finally, Elara said, What happens now? That depends on you. Don't put this on me. I'm just saying, I can't undo what I am. I can't go back to being the kid who worked in a garage and thought $20 was a fortune. That person doesn't exist anymore. His voice went rough. But I can keep you safe. Both of you. I can make sure no one ever threatens her again. At what cost? Does it matter? Yes. She opened her eyes, stared at the muted TV screen. Yes, it matters. Because I don't want her growing up thinking that's normal, that violence is just how problems get solved, that the world is divided into people who have power and people who get crushed by it. That's exactly how the world works, Elara. Not in my world. Your world is the one where you're working yourself to death at 2 jobs and still can't afford to turn the heat up past 60 degrees. His voice wasn't cruel, just factual. Your world is the one where you skip meals so Rosalie can eat, where you wear the same 3 outfits because you can't afford new clothes, where you lie awake at night wondering if you're going to get evicted because the landlord raised the rent again. She flinched. He wasn't wrong. I can change that, he continued. I can give her everything. Good schools, a safe neighborhood, a future that isn't just survival. And what do you want in return? I want to be her father. You can't buy that. I'm not trying to buy it. I'm trying to earn it. He paused. I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. Let me in, Elara. Let me be part of her life. She should have said no. Should have hung up the phone and blocked his number and gone back to the life she'd built, messy and exhausting and hers. But Rosalie's face flashed through her mind. The way she'd lit up when Lucien crouched down to her level in the park. The way she'd asked about him every day since. One condition, Elara heard herself say. Anything. You don't lie to her. Ever. I don't care how ugly the truth is. I don't care how much you want to protect her. If she asks you a question, you answer it honestly. Elara, that's the deal. Take it or leave it. Another pause. Then, okay. And if I find out you're putting her in danger, if I find out you're using her as leverage or involving her in your business or exposing her to any of this, her voice turned to steel. I will disappear. I will take her somewhere you'll never find us, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if she's okay. Understood. I mean it, Lucien. I know you do. That's why I'm agreeing. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. There's a diner on Lexington near 44th. Blue awning. You can buy her dinner. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't met her when she's tired and hungry. The ghost of a laugh. I'm looking forward to it. She hung up before he could say anything else. The next day dragged. Elara went through her morning shift at the cafe on autopilot, pouring coffee and making small talk and trying not to think about what she'd just agreed to. Her manager asked if she was feeling okay. She lied and said she was fine. Rosalie, meanwhile, was electric with excitement. Is Lucien really coming to dinner? Yes, baby. Can I wear my dinosaur shirt? Sure. Do you think he likes macaroni? Because I really like macaroni. I think he'll like whatever you like. Rosalie beamed. Elara's stomach churned. The diner was half empty when they arrived. Elara chose a booth near the back, out of sight of the windows. Old habit. She ordered Rosalie a chocolate milk and tried to ignore the way her hands shook as she tore open a sugar packet she didn't need. Lucien walked in at exactly 6 o'clock. He was dressed down again, jeans, dark sweater, leather jacket, trying to look normal. But there was still something about him that drew eyes, something that made the waitress pause mid-stride and the cook look up from the grill. Power, Elara realized. That was what it was. The kind of presence that didn't come from money or clothes, but from the certainty that he could handle whatever came next. Lucien! Rosalie practically bounced in her seat. He smiled. A real smile. Not the cold mask he wore for everyone else. Hey, Rosalie, nice shirt. Is that a T-Rex? It's a velociraptor. They were actually really smart, not like in the movies. I didn't know that. Most people don't, but I'm going to be a paleontologist when I grow up, so I have to know everything. Lucien slid into the booth across from them. That's a big word for someone your size. Mama teaches me big words. She says smart people use precise language. His eyes flicked to Elara. Something warm flickered in them. Your mama's right. The waitress appeared, notepad ready. They ordered burger and fries for Lucien, grilled cheese for Rosalie, soup for Elara that she knew she wouldn't eat. When the waitress left, Rosalie launched into a detailed explanation of every dinosaur she knew, complete with hand gestures and sound effects. Lucien listened like she was presenting a doctoral thesis. Elara watched them, her chest tight. This was what she'd been afraid of. Not the danger, not the violence, not the men in the park. This. The way Rosalie looked at him like he'd hung the stars. The way he looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. Because the more time they spent together, the harder it would be when it all fell apart. And it would fall apart. It always did. Mama, are you okay? Rosalie's voice cut through her thoughts. What? Yeah, baby, I'm fine. You look sad. Just tired. Lucien's eyes were on her now, sharp and assessing. He didn't call her out on the lie, but she could tell he didn't believe it. The food arrived. Rosalie attacked her grilled cheese with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't eaten in days. Lucien picked at his burger, more interested in watching his daughter than eating. So, he said carefully, your mom tells me you're in pre-K. Uh-huh. I can write my name and count to 100. That's impressive. Can you count to 100? Probably. Want to test me? Rosalie giggled. That's silly. Everyone can count to 100. You'd be surprised. They fell into an easy rhythm after that. Rosalie asking questions, Lucien answering, Elara sitting silent and trying to figure out how her life had become this. Sitting in a diner with a man who was both a stranger and the father of her child, watching them bond over French fries and dinosaur facts. It should have felt wrong, should have felt dangerous. Instead, it just felt inevitable. After dinner, Rosalie announced she had to use the bathroom. Elara started to get up, but Lucien said, I'll take her. She's 4. She can't go alone. I'll wait outside the door. Elara hesitated, then nodded. Rosalie slid out of the booth, grabbed Lucien's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, and dragged him toward the back of the diner. Elara watched them go, her throat tight. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. She almost didn't open it. Then she did. The text was just a photo. No message, no explanation. But the photo was enough. It showed Lucien walking into a building downtown. Expensive, high security, the kind of place that didn't appear on Google Maps. And standing next to him in the photo, shaking his hand, was a man Elara recognized from the news. Vincent Calabrese, head of one of the city's oldest crime families. Her blood ran cold. She stared at the photo, trying to make sense of it, trying to find an explanation that didn't lead to the conclusion her brain was already screaming. Lucien had said he ran legitimate businesses, imports, real estate, hotels, but legitimate businessmen didn't shake hands with mob bosses. Her hands were shaking when Lucien and Rosalie came back to the table. "Mama, Lucien says he has a surprise for me." Rosalie was practically vibrating with excitement. Elara forced a smile. "That's nice, baby." Lucien's eyes narrowed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. You're a terrible liar." "I'm fine." He didn't push, just watched her with that sharp, calculating gaze while Rosalie chattered on about the surprise. Apparently, he'd promised to take her to the Natural History Museum next weekend. Elara nodded in the right places, made the right sounds, but her mind was spinning, trying to figure out who'd sent that photo and why. They said goodbye outside the diner. Rosalie hugged Lucien like he'd been part of her life forever instead of just 3 days. He crouched down, whispered something in her ear that made her giggle, then stood and met Elara's eyes over her daughter's head. "Thank you," he said quietly. She didn't answer, just took Rosalie's hand and walked toward the subway station, feeling his eyes on her back the whole way. That night, after Rosalie was asleep, Elara sat on her bed and stared at the photo on her phone. She should delete it, should block the number and pretend it never happened. Instead, she saved it, because she needed to remember, needed to keep reminding herself that Lucien wasn't the boy she'd fallen in love with anymore. He was something else now, something dangerous. And no matter how good he was with Rosalie, no matter how much he claimed to want to be part of their lives, there was a whole world of violence and crime attached to him that she couldn't ignore. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. Same unknown number. Ask him about the Gallagher warehouse. Ask him what happened to the 3 men who tried to skim from his shipment last month. Ask him how he paid for that penthouse on 5th Avenue. Then, ask him if he's worth risking your daughter's life. Elara's hands shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. Someone was watching them. Someone who knew details about Lucien's business. Someone who wanted her to know exactly what kind of man he'd become. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Anger. Because whoever sent these texts, they'd miscalculated. They thought she didn't know what Lucien was. Thought she was some naive girl who'd fallen for a pretty face and a sad story. But Elara had been surviving on her own for 5 years. She'd learned to spot danger from 3 blocks away. She'd learned to trust her instincts, and her instincts were telling her that Lucien, dangerous as he was, wasn't the real threat here. The person sending these texts was. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came 30 seconds later. "A friend. Friends don't send threatening messages at midnight. Friends try to keep you from making mistakes that get people killed. What do you want?" "I want you to leave the city. Take your daughter and disappear before Moretti drags you into something you can't walk away from." "And if I don't?" The typing indicator appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Then you'll find out exactly what he's capable of, and by then, it'll be too late." The phone went silent after that. No matter how many times Elara typed back, no response came. She sat there until her alarm went off at 5:30, phone clutched in her hand, mind racing. Someone wanted her gone. Someone with enough intel on Lucien to be dangerous, enough access to track his movements, enough boldness to threaten a single mother in the middle of the night. And that someone was right about one thing. This was going to get worse before it got better. She thought about telling Lucien, thought about forwarding him the texts and letting him handle it the way he'd handled the men in the park. But something stopped her, because if she told him, he'd retaliate. And if he retaliated, more people would get hurt. And the cycle would continue until someone ended up dead, or worse, until Rosalie ended up in the crossfire. No, she had to handle this herself. Figure out who was threatening her and why. Figure out what they wanted. Figure out how to make them stop without dragging Lucien's world of violence into her daughter's life any more than it already had been. The next week passed in a blur. Lucien texted every day, asked how Rosalie was doing, confirmed plans for the museum, sent photos of exhibits he thought she'd like. Elara responded. Kept things normal. Didn't mention the texts that kept coming every few nights, each one more specific than the last. He killed a man in Chicago, beat him to death with his bare hands. The feds have a file on him 3 inches thick. His business partner disappeared last year. Body never found. Each text was designed to scare her, to make her see Lucien as a monster. And maybe he was a monster. Maybe everything in those texts was true. But he was also the man who'd listened to Rosalie talk about dinosaurs for 45 minutes without interrupting once. Who'd learned her favorite color and bought her a purple scarf because it was getting cold. Who looked at his daughter like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. People weren't simple. They weren't heroes or villains. They were complicated and messy and capable of both terrible things and profound love. Elara had learned that a long time ago. On Saturday, Lucien picked them up for the museum trip. He showed up in a regular car this time. No driver, no security, just him behind the wheel of a black sedan that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Rosalie climbed into the back seat, already talking a mile a minute. Elara slid into the passenger seat, hyper-aware of how close he was, how his hands looked on the steering wheel, how he smelled like expensive cologne and something darker underneath. They spent 3 hours at the museum. Rosalie dragged them through every dinosaur exhibit twice, asked 1,000 questions, made Lucien promise to buy her a book about velociraptors from the gift shop. It should have been perfect, but Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She kept scanning the crowds, looking for faces that appeared too many times, looking for cameras pointed their direction, looking for the person behind the texts. "You okay?" Lucien asked quietly while Rosalie was distracted by a life-size T-Rex skeleton. "Fine. You've been jumpy all day." "I'm always jumpy." He studied her for a long moment, and she could see him weighing whether to push. "If something's wrong, it's not." "Elara, drop it, Lucien." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay." They made it through the rest of the day without incident. Lucien bought Rosalie the book, plus a stuffed triceratops she'd been eyeing. They got ice cream even though it was freezing outside. Rosalie fell asleep in the back seat on the drive home, clutching her new dinosaur. Lucien pulled up outside Elara's building, killed the engine. "I know something's wrong," he said quietly, "and I know you don't trust me enough to tell me what it is. But when you're ready, I'm being threatened." The words came out before she could stop them. Lucien went very still. "What?" "Someone's been texting me, sending photos, telling me about your business, about the people you've hurt." She pulled out her phone, hand shaking, pulled up the texts. "They want me to leave. Take Rosalie and disappear." He took the phone, read through the messages, his expression getting darker with every line. When he looked up, his eyes were cold, furious. "How long?" "Since the diner. A week." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd do this. Get that look on your face like you're about to burn the city down." "Someone threatened my daughter." "Someone threatened me." "Same thing." "No." She grabbed the phone back. "It's not. Because if you go after whoever this is, if you start another war, Rosalie ends up in the middle of it, and I won't let that happen." "Then what do you want me to do? Just let them keep terrorizing you?" "I want you to think before you act. I want you to consider that maybe violence isn't the answer to everything. In my world, it's the only answer that works. Then maybe your world is the problem." The words hung between them, sharp and brutal. Lucien's hands curled into fists on the steering wheel. "You don't understand how this works." "Then explain it to me." These people don't respond to reason. They don't care about logic or morality or doing the right thing. They care about power. And the second you show weakness, the second they think they can push you without consequences, they'll take everything you have. "So what? You have to keep proving you're the biggest monster in the room?" "Yes." His voice was flat. "That's exactly what I have to do. Because the alternative is being the one who gets destroyed." Elara stared at him. at the hard line of his jaw, at the cold fury in his eyes, at the man he'd become. "I can't do this," she said quietly. "Do what?" "This. Whatever this is. I can't have Rosalie around someone who thinks violence is the only language that matters. Elara, take us home, please." He looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to grab her and shake her and make her understand. But instead, he just exhaled, long and slow, and nodded. Okay. They carried Rosalie upstairs in silence. Lucien laid her gently on her bed, pulled the blanket over her shoulders, brushed her hair back from her face with a gentleness that made Elara's chest ache. Then he straightened, turned to leave. "Lucien." He stopped in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she said. "I just don't." His voice was rough. "Don't apologize. You're right. About all of it." "Then why won't you change?" He looked back over his shoulder, and the expression on his face was so full of pain it almost broke her. "Because I don't know how." Then he was gone, and Elara was alone in her daughter's room with the sound of the door closing echoing in her ears. She thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. 3 days later, she came home from her morning shift to find her apartment door ajar. Her blood went cold. "Rosalie?" She pushed the door open slowly. "Baby, are you here?" Silence. Then she remembered. Rosalie was at pre-K, wouldn't be home for hours. Elara should have run, should have called the police, should have called Lucien, should have done anything except walk into that apartment. But this was her home, the only thing she had that was truly hers. She stepped inside. The place had been trashed, furniture overturned, drawers emptied, everything she owned scattered across the floor like garbage. And on the wall above her couch, spray-painted in red letters 3 feet high. Last warning. Elara's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of her life, and realized with horrible clarity that it was already too late. She'd tried to protect Rosalie from Lucien's world, but Lucien's world had found them anyway. And now she had nowhere left to run. Elara sat on the floor of her destroyed apartment for exactly 90 seconds before her survival instincts kicked back in. She couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when Rosalie would be home in 3 hours and needed a mother who could still function. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed. Lucien answered on the first ring. "Elara?" "They were in my apartment." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "They trashed everything. Left a message on the wall." Silence. Then, "Where's Rosalie?" "Pre-K, she's safe, for now." "Stay there. I'm coming." "Lucien?" But he'd already hung up. Elara pushed herself to her feet, started picking through the wreckage with numb fingers. Her dishes were smashed, her clothes ripped, the photos she'd kept in a shoebox under her bed, pictures of Rosalie as a baby, the only copies she had, scattered across the floor like they meant nothing. She found one photo of herself and Lucien from 6 years ago. They'd been at some carnival, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something she couldn't remember anymore. Someone had taken a knife to it, sliced right through the middle, separating them. The symbolism wasn't subtle. She was still holding the torn photograph when Lucien arrived 20 minutes later. He didn't knock, just opened the door. She'd left it unlocked, what was the point now, and stepped inside. He stopped dead when he saw the spray-painted wall. His face went blank, completely empty. The kind of expression that came right before someone did something irreversible. "Don't," Elara said. "Don't what?" "Whatever you're thinking, don't do it." He turned to look at her, and the rage in his eyes made her take a step back. "They came into your home. They destroyed your things. They threatened my daughter." "Our daughter. They're dead." His voice was flat, final. "Every single person involved in this. I'm going to find them, and I'm going to make sure they regret ever learning your name." "And then what? You think that solves anything? You think violence just makes this go away?" "Yes." He moved through the apartment, cataloging the damage with cold efficiency. "That's exactly what it does. You remove the threat, permanently, until the next threat shows up, and the one after that, and the one after that." She threw the torn photograph on the floor. "When does it end, Lucien?" "When I'm the only one left standing." The certainty in his voice terrified her, because she could see it now. The life he'd built, the empire he'd carved out of blood and brutality. She could see the bodies he'd left behind, the people he'd destroyed, the version of himself he'd killed to become this. And she realized with horrible clarity that he couldn't go back, wouldn't go back. Not for her, not for Rosalie, not for anyone. "I need to get Rosalie," she said quietly. "We need to leave." "Where are you going to go?" "I don't know. Somewhere they can't find us." "There is nowhere they can't find you. Not anymore." He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. "You're coming with me, both of you, tonight. Like hell we are." "This isn't a negotiation, Elara." "Yes, it is." She moved to stand between him and the door. "You don't get to make decisions for us. You don't get to sweep in and take over just because things got dangerous." "Things got dangerous the second those men saw you in the park." His voice turned harsh. "You think this is my fault? You think I wanted this? I've spent 5 years building walls between my life and everyone I cared about, and the moment I let those walls down, this happens. So what? You're saying this is because of me? Because I let you back in? I'm saying you're not safe here anymore. Neither of you. And if you won't protect yourself, then I have to do it for you. By dragging us into your world, by making Rosalie grow up around security guards and locked doors and the constant threat of violence, by keeping her alive." He grabbed her shoulders, not rough, but firm enough that she couldn't look away. "These people don't care that she's 4 years old. They don't care that she's innocent. All they care about is hurting me, and the only way to stop them is to make you untouchable. I don't want to be untouchable. I want to be normal." Normal ended the second I walked into that restaurant. The truth of it hit her like a fist. He was right. Everything had changed that night. There was no going back to the life she'd built, the careful routine she'd maintained, the illusion that she could keep Rosalie safe through sheer force of will. "I can't do this," she whispered. "You don't have a choice. There's always a choice." "Then choose to trust me." His hands gentled on her shoulders. "Just this once. Let me protect you." She wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him to get out, to leave them alone, to stop dragging them deeper into his nightmare. But standing in her destroyed apartment with Last Warning screaming from the wall, she realized she was out of options. "One night," she said. "We'll stay with you one night while I figure out what to do next. Okay? And you don't make any decisions about Rosalie without talking to me first." "Agreed. And if I say we're leaving, then you leave." He met her eyes. "I won't stop you, I promise." She didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. They picked up Rosalie together. Elara had called the school, said there was a family emergency, asked them to have her ready early. Rosalie came running out with her backpack and her stuffed triceratops, saw Lucien, and lit up. "Are we going on an adventure?" Elara forced a smile. "Something like that, baby." "Where are we going?" "To Lucien's house, just for tonight." "Does he have a big house?" Lucien crouched down to her level. "Pretty big. You want to see it?" "Yeah." She grabbed his hand. "Can we watch movies? Mama never lets me watch movies on school nights." "We'll see what your mom says." They drove across the city in silence. Well, Elara was silent. Rosalie talked non-stop, asking questions about everything they passed, making up stories about the people in other cars, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between the two adults. Lucien's building was in the financial district, all glass and steel and security that probably cost more than most people's mortgages. The parking garage required 3 separate clearances. The elevator needed a key card and a fingerprint scan. Rosalie thought it was the coolest thing she'd ever seen. The penthouse took up the entire top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than Elara's car. It was beautiful and cold and nothing like a home. "Wow," Rosalie breathed. "You live here all by yourself?" "I do." Lucien set down Elara's hastily packed bag. "What do you think?" "I think it's really big and really tall. Can you see everything from up here?" "Just about." She ran to the windows, pressed her face against the glass. Lucien followed, pointed out landmarks. The park where they'd met, the museum they'd visited, the river cutting through the city like a silver thread. Elara stood in the middle of the penthouse and tried not to think about how badly she'd miscalculated. She'd thought keeping Lucien at arm's length would protect Rosalie. She'd thought maintaining boundaries would keep their worlds separate. But those worlds had collided the second he'd sat down at table 12, and now there was no separating them. "Mama, can we order pizza?" Rosalie called out. "Lucien says there's a place that delivers." "Sure, baby." The evening passed in a surreal haze. They ate pizza on the couch. Rosalie watched a movie, curled up between them. Lucien answered a dozen work calls in another room, his voice low and dangerous, discussing things Elara tried not to hear. By 9 o'clock, Rosalie was yawning. Elara put her to bed in the guest room, which was bigger than their entire apartment, and sat with her until she fell asleep. When she came back out, Lucien was standing by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "I want to know who's behind this by morning. Check every contact, every transaction, every goddamn email. Someone gave the order. Find them." He hung up, turned, saw Elara watching. "How much of that did you hear?" "Enough." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. She took it, even though she rarely drank. Tonight felt like an exception. "They'll find them," he said. "By tomorrow morning, I'll know exactly who ordered the break-in and why. And then? And then I make sure it never happens again." Elara took a long drink. The whiskey burned going down. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I'm starting to understand why you do it. Why you think violence is the answer." She stared at the amber liquid in her glass. "Someone came into my home. They destroyed everything I've worked for. They made my daughter unsafe. And part of me, a part I don't like very much, wants you to make them suffer for it." "That doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make me a good one either. Good and bad aren't real, Elara. There's just survival." He moved closer, his reflection ghosting across the window behind her. "You do what you have to do to protect the people you love. Everything else is just philosophy." "Is that what you tell yourself? When you're hurting people?" "I don't have to tell myself anything. I know what I am." "And what's that?" He met her eyes in the reflection. "A monster who loves his daughter." The honesty of it stole her breath. They stood like that for a long moment, inches apart, the city lights flickering below them like fallen stars. Then Lucien's phone buzzed. He checked it. His expression went dark. "What?" Elara asked. "They found something." He was already moving toward his office. "Stay here." "Lucien." But he was gone, door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded like a gunshot. Elara stood alone in the living room, glass clutched in her hand, trying not to imagine what kind of information could make him look like that. She should have listened to her instincts. Should have gone to the guest room and locked the door and pretended she hadn't seen anything. Instead, she crossed to his office and pressed her ear against the door. "Confirmed," Lucien's voice, low and deadly. A pause. Someone on speakerphone. "Yes, sir, the IP trace came back to an address in Brooklyn, apartment registered to a Marcus Chen. He's the floor manager at Raphael's." Lucien's voice went cold. "He's her manager." Elara's blood froze. Marcus. Her boss. The man who'd been writing her up for being late. The man who knew her schedule, knew when she'd be home. Knew everything about her life because she'd been stupid enough to trust him. "He's been on Calabrese's payroll for 3 years, the voice continued. "Small jobs. Information gathering. Usually corporate espionage, nothing violent. But 2 weeks ago, he got a new assignment. Monitor Elara Voss. Report her movements. Find out about her connection to you." "Is he working alone?" "We don't think so. Bank records show payments from a shell company linked to the Calabrese family. Looks like they've been planning this for a while." "Vincent Calabrese," Lucien said the name like a curse. "He wants a war." "Seems that way, sir." "Then he's going to get one." The line went dead. Elara stumbled back from the door, her mind racing. Marcus. It was Marcus the whole time, not some faceless enemy, not some random threat. A man she'd worked beside for 8 months. A man who'd smiled at her and asked about Rosalie and seemed normal. The door opened. Lucien stood there, and the look on his face made her stomach drop. "You heard?" It wasn't a question. "Marcus?" she whispered. "Why?" "Because Vincent Calabrese found out about Rosalie. Because he knows the fastest way to hurt me is through my family." His hands curled into fists. Because I've been taking territory from his organization for the past year, and he wants to remind me that I'm not untouchable. This is about territory? About business? Her voice cracked. My daughter's life is in danger because of a turf war? This is about power. It's always about power. Then give it back. She grabbed his arm. Give him whatever he wants, territory, money, whatever. Just make this stop. It doesn't work that way. Then make it work that way. If I give in now, every other organization in this city will see it as weakness. They'll all come after me, after you, after Rosalie. The only way to stop this is to make an example out of Calabrese. Make sure everyone knows what happens when they threaten what's mine. We're not yours. The words came out hard, angry. We're not possessions you can defend like territory. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you meant. She pulled away from him. You want to protect us? Fine. Do it. But don't pretend this is about love or family or anything noble. This is about your ego, your reputation, your need to be the biggest monster in the room. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe. But it was gone before she could name it. Believe what you want, he said quietly. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to Vincent Calabrese's estate, and I'm going to end this. Permanently. You and Rosalie will stay here where it's safe. You're going to kill him. Yes. Just like that. Just like that. And his family, his organization, everyone connected to him? If that's what it takes. Elara stared at him, at the cold certainty in his eyes, at the man who'd once promised her forever and was now promising mass murder. I can't be with someone who thinks like that. I know. Then why are you doing this? Because I'd rather have you alive and hating me than dead and at peace with who I am. He turned toward the window. Get some sleep, Elara. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She should have argued, should have tried to talk him out of it, should have done something, anything, to stop what was coming. But she was so tired, tired of fighting, tired of pretending she could control any of this, tired of being the only adult in the room who still thought words mattered more than bullets. She went to the guest room, lay down next to Rosalie, listened to her daughter's soft breathing, and tried not to think about what morning would bring. She must have fallen asleep eventually, because when she woke up, sunlight was streaming through the windows and Rosalie was gone. Elara's heart stopped. She threw off the covers, stumbled into the living room. Rosalie? No answer. Rosalie! Lucien appeared from the kitchen, Rosalie on his hip, both of them holding spatulas. We're making pancakes, Rosalie announced proudly. Lucien is teaching me to flip them. The relief was so intense, Elara almost collapsed. You scared me, she said shakily. Sorry. Lucien set Rosalie down, sent her back to the kitchen to watch the stove. I thought you could use the sleep. What time is it? Almost 9. You're still here. Meeting got pushed to 11. His expression was unreadable. Calabrese wants to talk first. That's good. That means maybe it doesn't mean anything. He's just buying time to set up his own countermove. You don't know that. Yes, I do. This is what I do, Elara. I know how these people think. I know what they're planning before they do. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that there was still a chance for diplomacy, for a solution that didn't end in bloodshed. But looking at his face, she knew it was pointless. This had been inevitable from the moment Vincent Calabrese learned Lucien Moretti had a daughter. They ate pancakes. Rosalie chattered about school. Lucien checked his phone every 3 minutes, his expression getting darker with each message. At 10:30, 3 men in suits arrived. Security, Elara realized, the kind who carried guns under their jackets and knew how to use them. Stay here, Lucien told her. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't leave for any reason. The security system is armed. If anything happens, there's a panic button in every room. You're scaring her, Elara said quietly, nodding toward Rosalie. He looked at his daughter. His expression softened. Hey, Rosalie, I have to go to a boring work meeting. Can you keep your mom company for me? Will you be back for lunch? I'll try. Can we watch another movie? Whatever you want. She hugged him. He held on a few seconds longer than necessary, like he was memorizing the feeling. Then he straightened, met Elara's eyes over Rosalie's head. If I don't come back, don't say that. If I don't come back, there's a lawyer. His card is in the top drawer of my desk. He has instructions for Rosalie's trust fund, for the penthouse, for everything. You'll be taken care of. Lucien, please. I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed, like he'd never said them before and wasn't sure he was doing it right. I loved you 6 years ago, and I love you now, and I'll love you until the day I die. I need you to know that. Her throat closed. Don't do this. I have to. Then don't do it alone. This is the one thing I can't ask you to be part of. He kissed Rosalie's forehead, looked at Elara one more time, then he was gone, the door closing behind him with terrible finality. Elara stood frozen, Rosalie's hand in hers, listening to the elevator descend. She should have felt relieved, should have been grateful he was handling it, that he was keeping them safe, that she didn't have to watch whatever happened next. Instead, she felt sick, because she'd just realized something. The texts, the threats, the break-in, the spray-painted warning. It had all been too easy. Marcus was just a floor manager, a small-time informant on a mob payroll. He didn't have the resources to orchestrate a campaign like this. Didn't have access to the kind of intelligence that had been in those text messages. Someone had fed him information. Someone had pointed him at Elara. Someone wanted Lucien to think Vincent Calabrese was behind this. Her hand started shaking. Mama? Rosalie tugged on her sleeve. Are you okay? Baby, I need you to do something for me. Can you go to your room and close the door? Why? Because I need to make a phone call, and it's going to be boring adult stuff. Rosalie sighed dramatically, but obeyed. The second her door closed, Elara ran to Lucien's office. The desk was neat, organized. She tore through the drawers, looking for anything that might tell her who Lucien's enemies actually were. Business records, financial statements, contracts with names she didn't recognize. Then she found it. A folder marked Calabrese Acquisition. She opened it. Inside were documents outlining a deal, a merger. Vincent Calabrese was selling half his territory to Lucien Moretti in exchange for protection and a share of the profits. The deal had been signed 3 weeks ago. Both parties had agreed to keep it quiet until the transition was complete. They weren't enemies. They were partners. Which meant Vincent Calabrese had no reason to threaten Lucien's family. No reason to risk the deal by starting a war. Someone else wanted them to fight. Someone who'd benefit from both organizations destroying each other. Elara's mind raced, trying to piece it together. Then she remembered something Lucien had said. I've spent 5 years building walls between my life and everyone I cared about. What if someone from his past had figured out those walls were coming down? What if someone who'd been there when he left, who'd known about the debts, who'd known about Elara? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Who is this? You're smarter than I gave you credit for. The voice was male, unfamiliar, cold. Took you long enough to figure it out. Figure what out? That there is no war, that Calabrese has been Moretti's puppet for months, that I've been playing you both like a violin. Her blood ran cold. Who are you? Someone who's been waiting a very long time for Lucien Moretti to care about something again, something I could take away from him. The voice turned ugly. He thought leaving you would keep you safe, thought erasing his past would protect his future, but I never forgot. I've been watching, waiting, and the second he slipped up, the second he let himself love something, you used me as bait. I used you as a weapon. And in about 10 minutes, Lucien is going to walk into Calabrese's estate thinking he's going to war. What he doesn't know is that I've arranged for federal agents to raid the place at the exact same time. Both organizations will be destroyed. Lucien will either die in the crossfire or spend the rest of his life in prison. The man laughed, cold and cruel. Either way, he loses everything. Why? Because 5 years ago, Lucien Moretti killed my brother, beat him to death in an alley over money, left him there like garbage. The voice turned to ice. He thought he could walk away from that, build a new life, forget. But I don't forget, and neither should you. The line went dead. Elara stood there, phone clutched in her hand, mind screaming, 10 minutes, maybe less. Lucien was walking into a trap. If she called him, he wouldn't answer. He never did during meetings. If she tried to reach his security team, she didn't have their numbers. And if she did nothing, he'd die. Or worse. She thought about Rosalie, about keeping her safe, about staying in this penthouse and letting the man who destroyed her life 5 years ago get what he deserved. She thought about justice and karma and all the people Lucien had hurt to build his empire. Then she thought about him crouching in the snow, looking at his daughter like she was the only miracle he'd ever witnessed. She grabbed her coat. "Rosalie!" She ran to the guest room. "Baby, we have to go. Right now." "Where are we going?" "To help Lucien." "Is he in trouble?" "Yes." Rosalie's eyes went wide. But she didn't argue, just grabbed her triceratops and took her mother's hand. They ran. The Calabrese estate was 40 minutes outside the city. Elara drove like her life depended on it, weaving through traffic, running red lights, praying she'd make it in time. Rosalie sat in the back seat, clutching her stuffed dinosaur, completely silent. Elara's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the wheel. She didn't have a plan, didn't have a weapon, didn't have anything except the desperate need to stop what was about to happen. She reached the estate at 11:14. The gates were open. Black sedans lined the driveway. Men in suits standing guard at the entrance. She screeched to a halt, threw the car into park. "Stay here," she told Rosalie. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or Lucien. Understand?" "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby. Me too." She kissed her forehead. "I'll be right back." She ran toward the entrance. The guards moved to stop her. "I need to see Lucien Moretti. Right now." "Ma'am, you need to leave." "Tell him Elara is here. Tell him it's a trap. Tell him the feds are coming and he needs to get out now." The guards looked at each other. One of them spoke into his radio. 30 seconds later, Lucien appeared at the door. "Elara?" His face went pale. "What are you doing here? Where's Rosalie?" "In the car. Lucien, you have to listen to me." That's when the sirens started, dozens of them, coming from every direction. Federal agents poured through the gates like a flood. Black SUVs, armed men in tactical gear, shouting, orders, chaos. Lucien grabbed her arm. "What did you do?" "Nothing. Someone set this up. Someone who wants both you and Calabrese destroyed. Get on the ground. Hands where we can see them." Agents swarmed them, guns drawn, voices overlapping. Elara hit the ground, hands over her head, heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. She could hear Lucien shouting, could hear the agents yelling back, could hear gunfire somewhere in the distance, inside the house. This was it. This was how it ended. Then a voice cut through the chaos. "Hold your fire!" A man in a suit stepped forward. Not tactical gear, just a suit. He looked at Lucien, then at Elara, then at the car where Rosalie's terrified face was pressed against the window. "Lucien Moretti?" "Yes." "Special Agent Williams, I think we need to talk." Lucien's jaw was tight. "About what?" "About the deal you made with the Bureau 6 months ago. About your cooperation in bringing down Vincent Calabrese's organization. About the immunity agreement you signed." Williams pulled out a folder. "Ring any bells?" Elara's head snapped up. "What?" Lucien wouldn't look at her. Williams continued, "Seems like someone tried to sabotage this operation. Tipped off Calabrese that you were wearing a wire. Tried to turn this into a bloodbath." He looked at Elara. "You just saved about 30 lives by warning us, including his." She stared at Lucien. "You were working with the feds?" He finally met her eyes. "I told you I was trying to go legitimate. By betraying your partners? By doing whatever it took to build a life where my daughter would be safe." The words hit her like a slap. Everything she'd thought she knew about him, the violence, the ruthlessness, the cold certainty that war was the only answer, it had all been an act, a cover, a way to protect the deal he'd made to leave his old life behind. "How long?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. 6 months, since the day I found out about Rosalie." His expression cracked. "I spent 5 years building this empire, and it took me 5 seconds to realize I'd burn it all down if it meant giving her a normal life." Tears burned in her eyes. "You lied to me." "I had to. If anyone found out I'd flipped, they would have killed you both. The only way to keep you safe was to make everyone think I was still the same monster I'd always been. So all of it, the threats, the violence, the war with Calabrese, was staged, controlled, designed to make the other organizations think nothing had changed while the Bureau dismantled everything from the inside." He took a step toward her. "I was going to tell you, after today, after Calabrese was arrested and the operation was complete and you were safe. But someone figured it out. Someone from my past. Someone who wanted revenge badly enough to risk exposing the whole thing. Agent Williams cleared his throat. We'll need statements from both of you, and we're going to need to put you in protective custody until we can identify who's been orchestrating this. How long? Elara asked. Could be weeks. Could be months. She looked at Rosalie, still terrified in the car. Looked at Lucien, standing there with his entire world collapsing around him. Looked at the agents and the guns and the chaos. And she realized that nothing had changed. They were still in danger, still running, still trapped in a life neither of them had chosen. No, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. No? Williams repeated. No protective custody, no hiding, no more running. She looked at Lucien. We end this, now, tonight. We find whoever's behind this, and we make them answer for it, permanently. Elara, Lucien started. You said you'd do whatever it took to keep us safe. Did you mean it? Yes. Then stop protecting me from your world and let me help you survive it. His eyes went wide. Agent Williams shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. Her voice turned to steel. Someone tried to kill the father of my child. Someone threatened my daughter. Someone destroyed my home and my life and thought they could walk away from it. She met Williams' eyes. You want statements? Fine. But first I want the name of every person who knew about Lucien's deal with the Bureau, because one of them is a traitor, and we're going to find them. The agent stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay. Elara turned to Lucien. We're in this together now. All the way. No more secrets, no more lies, no more trying to protect me from the truth. Are you sure? No. She reached for his hand. But I'm done being helpless. I'm done watching from the sidelines while you fight my battles. If we're going to survive this, we do it together. His fingers closed around hers. Together, he agreed. And standing there in the chaos, surrounded by federal agents and the wreckage of Lucien's old life, Elara Voss made a choice. She'd spent 5 years trying to build a safe, normal life for her daughter. But safe was an illusion. Normal was a lie. The only thing that mattered was survival. And if survival meant becoming the kind of person who could stand in the fire and not burn, then that's exactly what she'd do. The federal building smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent lights. Elara sat in a gray interrogation room with Rosalie curled in her lap, watching through the one-way mirror as Agent Williams questioned Lucien in the adjacent room. Let's go over this again, Williams said, his voice crackling through the speaker. 6 months ago, you approached us with an offer. Information on Vincent Calabrese's entire operation in exchange for immunity. Why? Lucien's face was stone. I already told you. I found out I had a daughter. And that was enough to flip on everyone you'd worked with for 5 years? Yes. Forgive me if I find that hard to believe. I don't care what you believe. Lucien leaned forward. I gave you Calabrese. I gave you his distribution network, his money laundering operations, his contacts in city government. I handed you the biggest organized crime takedown this city's seen in 20 years. So either charge me with something or let me see my family. Williams tapped his pen against the table. Here's what I don't understand. You've been feeding us information for months, clean intelligence, good arrests, no leaks. Then suddenly, someone tries to sabotage the whole operation. Someone who knew about the raid timing, the location, everything. He paused. Someone on the inside. Elara's stomach dropped. Williams continued, We've been through everyone on my team. Everyone in the Bureau who had access to this case. They're all clean, which means the leak came from your side. That's impossible. Is it? Because the only people who knew the full scope of this operation were you, me, and your security chief. A man named, Williams checked his notes, Daniel Reeves, former military, been with you for 3 years. You trust him? Lucien's expression didn't change, but Elara saw his hands curl into fists under the table. With my life. Maybe you shouldn't. The door to Elara's observation room opened. A female agent stepped in, young, dark hair pulled back tight. Miss Voss, we need you to come with us. Elara's arms tightened around Rosalie. Why? We've identified this person behind the threats, the one who's been texting you, orchestrating the break-in, trying to start a war between Moretti and Calabrese. The agent's expression was grim. "You're not going to like it." They moved to a different room, larger. Multiple screens showing surveillance footage, phone records, financial transactions. A web of connections that made Elara's head spin. Williams appeared, Lucien right behind him. Lucien's eyes found hers immediately, checking to make sure she and Rosalie were okay. "Show them," Williams said. The agent pulled up a photograph. A man in his 30s, sharp suit, cold eyes. Elara had never seen him before. "Christopher Reeves," the agent said. "Daniel Reeves's younger brother. 5 years ago, he was working as an enforcer for a loan shark named Victor Moretti." "Your father," she said, looking at Lucien. Lucien's jaw tightened. "I know who my father was." "Then you know he died owing money to half the criminal organizations in this city, including Christopher Reeves's employer. When Victor disappeared, he didn't disappear. He overdosed in a motel room." "Right. When that happened, Christopher went looking for payment, found you instead." The agent pulled up more photos. "According to our investigation, you and Christopher got into an altercation in an alley near the docks. Witnesses say you beat him unconscious, left him there." "He came at me with a knife," Lucien said flatly. "I defended myself." "Did you know he spent 6 months in a coma?" Silence. "Did you know that when he woke up, he'd sustained permanent brain damage, lost most of his motor function on his left side? That he could never work again?" "No." Lucien's voice came out rough. "I thought he was fine. You thought wrong." Williams pulled up another photo. This one showed Christopher Reeves in a wheelchair, his left side clearly paralyzed, eyes burning with hate. "He's been in that chair for 5 years. 5 years of physical therapy, surgeries, pain. 5 years of watching you build an empire while he rotted." Elara felt sick. "Where is he now?" "That's the problem. We don't know." The agent pulled up more surveillance. 3 weeks ago, he vanished, left his apartment in Brooklyn, cleaned out his bank accounts, went completely dark. 3 weeks, Lucien repeated, right around the time I first contacted Elara. Exactly. "We think he's been tracking you, waiting for you to show weakness. And when you finally did, he saw his chance for revenge." Williams nodded. "But here's where it gets interesting. Christopher Reeves doesn't have the resources to pull off what he's done. The surveillance on your family, the coordination with Marcus Chen, the intelligence about the raid. Someone's been helping him." "Daniel," Lucien said quietly. "His brother, who's been your head of security for 3 years, who's had access to everything, your schedule, your contacts, your deals with us." Williams pulled up financial records. "We found payments, significant ones. Offshore accounts. Daniel's been funneling money to Christopher for months." "Jesus Christ." Lucien ran his hands through his hair. "He's been planning this the whole time, getting close to me, gaining my trust, waiting, and now he's ready to move." Williams pulled up a new screen. 20 minutes ago, we intercepted a communication. Daniel Reeves sent a message to an unknown number. All it said was, "Tonight, the harbor. Bring them both." Elara's blood went cold. "Them? We think he means you and Rosalie." The room went silent. Lucien moved so fast the agents barely had time to react. He grabbed Williams by the front of his shirt, slammed him against the wall. "You put protection on them. Right now. Full detail. Armed guards. I don't care what it costs. Moretti, let him go. I will burn this entire city down if anything happens to them." "Lucien!" Elara's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop." He froze, turned to look at her. She was standing now, Rosalie still in her arms, her expression calm in a way that made his stomach drop. "Put him down," she said quietly. Lucien released Williams, stepped back, hands shaking. Elara looked at the agents. "He wants to draw us out, make Lucien come to the harbor, use us as bait. That's our assessment, yes. Then let's give him what he wants." "Elara, no," Lucien started. "You said we were in this together. You said no more protecting me from your world." She met his eyes. "So let me help you end this. For real this time." Williams straightened his shirt. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're a civilian. We can't—" "You need him to show up," Elara interrupted. "Christopher Reeves. He won't come out of hiding unless he thinks he's won, unless he thinks he has what Lucien loves most." She paused. So we let him think that. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to finish this tonight, so my daughter doesn't have to grow up looking over her shoulder. Lucien crossed the room, grabbed her shoulders, not rough, but desperate. I can't let you do this. You don't get to decide. If something happens to you, then you make sure it doesn't. Her voice was steel. You've spent 5 years surviving in a world that eats people alive. You've beaten, manipulated, and destroyed everyone who got in your way. So do it one more time. Protect us, like you promised. His eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, looking for fear, finding only absolute certainty. Okay, he said finally, but we do this my way. William stepped forward. Mr. Moretti, the Bureau can't sanction. I don't need your sanction. I need your agents positioned around the harbor, sniper support, tactical teams on standby. You get Christopher Reeves on criminal charges, and I get my family back safe. Everyone wins. And if something goes wrong? Lucien's expression went cold. Then you'd better hope your men are faster than mine. The next 4 hours were a blur of preparation. The Bureau set up surveillance around the old shipping harbor on the east side. Abandoned warehouses, rusted containers, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Elara sat in a van 2 blocks away, watching agents attach a wire to her chest. The adhesive was cold against her skin. Rosalie was with a federal marshal in a safe location 10 miles away, crying for her mother. Elara had promised she'd be back soon. She intended to keep that promise. Lucien appeared at the van door. The agents gave them space. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Elara, 5 years ago you left to protect me. You made that choice alone. You decided what I could handle and what I couldn't. She finished buttoning her coat over the wire. This time, I'm making the choice, and I'm choosing to fight. He was quiet for a long moment, then, when this is over, don't. She cut him off. Don't make promises about after. Just make sure there is an after. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her chest ache. I love you, he said. I need you to know that, no matter what happens tonight. I know. Do you love me? The question hung between them. Elara thought about lying, thought about protecting herself one more time. Instead, she said, yes. I never stopped. Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to, I couldn't stop. He kissed her, soft and desperate, and full of 5 years of lost time. She kissed him back, tasting salt and regret and hope. Then Williams appeared. It's time. They drove to the harbor in separate vehicles. Elara in an unmarked sedan with 2 agents. Lucien in his own car, followed by what was left of his security team. 3 men who'd been vetted by the Bureau and cleared of involvement. The harbor was dark. No streetlights. Just the distant glow of the city reflecting off black water. Elara's phone buzzed. Unknown number, Pier 7. Alone. You have 5 minutes. She showed the text to the agent driving. He spoke into his radio. Target has made contact. All units stand by. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The wire under her coat felt like it was burning. She stepped out of the car, and the wind off the water cut right through her. Pier 7 stretched out into the darkness. Empty shipping containers stacked like metal tombs. The sound of water lapping against concrete. She started walking. Elara, wait. Lucien's voice crackled through the earpiece they'd given her. I have to do this. Just be careful. Always. She reached the end of the pier. Nothing. Just darkness and the smell of rust and salt. Then a voice behind her. You came alone. Good. She spun around. Daniel Reeves stood 20 feet away, gun in his hand. He looked tired, older than she remembered from the few times she'd seen him with Lucien, the kind of tired that went bone deep. Where's your brother? She asked. Close. Where's Moretti? Waiting, like you wanted. Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You know what's funny? I actually liked working for him. Lucien was good to me, paid well, treated me with respect. The smile faded. But every time I looked at him, all I could see was my brother. In that chair, unable to walk, unable to work, unable to have a life, because of one fight in an alley 5 years ago. So you destroyed everything. For revenge. For justice. Justice would be taking him to court. This is just violence wearing a different mask. Says the woman who came here to help trap my brother. He wasn't wrong. Movement to her left. Elara turned. Christopher Reeves emerged from behind a container, being pushed in his wheelchair by a woman Elara didn't recognize. His left side hung useless, but his right hand held a gun steady enough. Ms. Voss. His voice was slurred, the words coming out thick. Finally, the woman who broke Lucien Moretti. I didn't break him. No? Christopher's laugh was bitter. He spent 5 years building an empire, 5 years being untouchable. Then you showed up with a daughter he didn't know existed, and suddenly he's making deals with the feds, turning on his partners, dismantling everything he built. He wheeled closer. You broke him. You just don't want to admit it. What do you want? I want him to suffer. Christopher's eyes were bright with hate. I want him to lose everything the way I lost everything. I want him to watch the people he loves die. And then I want him to spend the rest of his life knowing it was his fault. So kill me, get it over with. Oh, we will, but not yet. Christopher nodded to his brother. Bring him out. Daniel spoke into a radio. He's clear. 30 seconds later, Lucien appeared at the end of the pier. No security, no weapons visible. Just him, walking forward with the kind of certainty that came from having nothing left to lose. Christopher, he said, it's been a while. 5 years. You look good. Liar. Christopher's hand tightened on the gun. You did this to me. You put me in this chair. You came at me with a knife because you owed us money. My father owed you money. I didn't owe you anything. Your father was dead. That made you responsible. So you tried to kill me. I tried to collect. Christopher's voice cracked. And you beat me half to death. Left me bleeding in that alley. Didn't even check to see if I was alive. Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then, you're right. Christopher blinked. What? You're right. I should have checked. Should have called an ambulance. Should have done something other than walk away. Lucien took a step closer. I was 23, scared, angry at my father for dying and leaving me with his debts. I took it out on you. That was wrong. You think an apology fixes this? No, I don't think anything fixes this, but I can offer you something else. What? A choice. Lucien gestured to Elara. You can kill her, make me suffer, spend the rest of your life running from the FBI. Or you can kill me instead. Take your revenge directly. Let her and my daughter go free. Lucien, no, Elara started. It's a fair trade, he continued, ignoring her. You get what you want. I get peace knowing they're safe. Everyone wins. Christopher stared at him. You'd die for her? Without hesitation. Even though she hates you? She doesn't hate me. Lucien looked at Elara, and the expression on his face made her chest crack open. She might wish she did, but she doesn't. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Chris, maybe we should... Shut up. Christopher's eyes never left Lucien. You really would die for them. Yes. And you think that makes you noble? That it erases what you did to me? No. It just makes me a father. Lucien's voice went soft. I wasn't there when my daughter was born. I wasn't there for her first steps, her first words, her first anything. I missed everything, and I can't get that back. But I can make sure she has a future, even if I'm not in it. The silence stretched out, water lapping, wind cutting, the distant sound of the city that didn't care what happened on this pier. Then Christopher said, Okay. Daniel's head snapped toward his brother. What? Okay, I'll take your deal. Christopher raised the gun, aimed it at Lucien's chest. You die. She goes free. The FBI gets nothing. Chris, wait! This is what we wanted. Christopher's voice turned sharp. He took everything from me. Now I take everything from him. But killing him doesn't matter. Christopher's hand shook. 5 years in this chair, 5 years of pain and therapy, and people looking at me like I'm broken. He did this, and he's going to pay for it. Elara saw it happening, saw Christopher's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Lucien standing there, not moving, not fighting, just accepting. and she realized with horrible clarity that he meant it. He was going to let Christopher kill him, was going to die thinking it was the only way to save her and Rosalie. No. The word came out of her mouth before she could think. Everyone turned to look at her. No, she repeated. I don't accept this deal. Lucien's eyes went wide. Elara, you don't get to make decisions for me, remember? That was the deal. We're in this together. She took a step toward Christopher. You want revenge? Fine. I understand that. But killing him doesn't give you your life back. It just makes you a murderer. I don't care. Yes, you do. Because if you didn't care, you would have killed him the second he walked onto this pier. She moved closer, ignoring Daniel's gun tracking her. You want him to suffer, I get it. But making him watch you kill me? That's suffering. That's revenge. Elara, what are you doing? Lucien started. So here's my counteroffer, she continued. You let him live. You let us both live. And in exchange, Lucien gives you something worth more than his death. Christopher laughed, bitter and broken. What could he possibly give me that's worth more than watching him die? $5 million. The pier went silent. Daniel's gun lowered slightly. What? $5 million, Elara repeated. Cash. Untraceable. Enough to disappear. Get the best medical care money can buy. Start over somewhere far from here. She looked at Lucien. He has it. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, I've seen the records. Lucien stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Then understanding dawned in his eyes. She's right, he said slowly. I have the money. I can get it to you within 24 hours. Why would I believe you? Because Agent Williams is listening to every word of this conversation. Lucien looked directly at the darkness where he knew the sniper teams were positioned. And he can verify the accounts. Can't you, Williams? A pause. Then Williams's voice crackled over a speaker somewhere in the darkness. I can verify that Lucien Moretti has significant offshore assets. Whether he'd actually give them up is another question. I will, Lucien said. Every cent. In exchange for letting them walk away. Christopher's hand wavered. 5 million. 5 million. Clean, yours, no strings. And you get to live. Get to keep your family. Get to win. I don't win. Lucien's voice turned raw. I lost 5 years with my daughter. I lost the woman I love. I lost any chance at a normal life. The money means nothing. Let me trade it for something that does. Elara held her breath. Christopher looked at his brother. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, Christopher said finally. Okay. But I want proof. Before anyone moves, I want verification that the money exists. Fair enough. Lucien pulled out his phone slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. He pulled up banking information, handed the phone to Daniel. Check it yourself. Daniel scrolled through the screens. His eyes went wide. He showed it to Christopher. Jesus Christ, Christopher breathed. It's real. It's real, and it's yours, tonight, as soon as you let them go. Christopher lowered the gun. Elara's legs almost gave out. One condition, Christopher said. You don't come after us. You don't send the FBI after us. You don't spend the rest of your life hunting us down. Agreed. And you tell everyone, every person in this city who thinks you're some kind of untouchable kingpin. You tell them that Christopher Reeves beat you, that you paid him $5 million to spare your life. Lucien's jaw tightened. That would destroy his reputation, make him look weak, make him a target for every organization that had been afraid to move against him. But he said, done. Christopher nodded, gestured to Elara. Go. She didn't need to be told twice. She walked toward Lucien, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. He caught her when she stumbled, pulled her close, held her like he'd never let go. You're insane, he whispered into her hair. Runs in the family, apparently. That money was going to get seized by the feds anyway once your deal went through. Now, at least it's doing some good. He laughed. It sounded like relief and disbelief mixed together. Behind them, Daniel was helping Christopher back toward the shipping containers. The woman who'd been pushing the wheelchair followed, already on her phone, probably arranging transportation. Williams's voice crackled over the speaker. All units hold position. Let them leave. You're just going to let them go? One of the agents protested. We got what we needed. Calabresi's organization is dismantled. Moretti's cooperating, and we just avoided a bloodbath. Williams paused. Sometimes justice looks like letting people walk away. Lucien and Elara stood on that pier, wrapped in each other, watching the Reeves brothers disappear into the darkness. Is it over? Elara asked quietly. The Bureau still needs my testimony. There will be trials, investigations. But the war? He nodded. Yeah, it's over. And Christopher? We'll probably use that money to disappear somewhere tropical. Get the surgeries he needs? Live out his life in relative peace. You really don't care about the money? I care about you. He pulled back to look at her. I care about Rosalie. The money was always just a means to an end, a way to build enough power that no one could hurt what mattered. And now? Now I get to figure out what matters looks like without the power. Federal agents were emerging from the shadows now, securing the scene, checking for any threats. Williams approached, looking tired and impressed in equal measure. Hell of a negotiation, Ms. Voss. I had good motivation. We'll need both of you to come back to the office. Statements, paperwork, all the fun stuff. He looked at Lucien. And you and I need to have a very long conversation about those offshore accounts. They're yours, all of them. Consider it a donation to the Bureau. Williams raised an eyebrow. Generous. I'm a changed man. We'll see. They were loading into vehicles when Elara's phone rang, the federal marshal watching Rosalie. Ms. Voss, your daughter is asking for you. She won't go to sleep. Elara felt tears burn her eyes. Tell her I'm coming. Tell her Mama's coming right now. She hung up, looked at Lucien. Let's go get our daughter, she said. He took her hand, and for the first time in 5 years, walking away from that pier with the woman he loved and the promise of seeing his daughter safe, Lucien Moretti felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. But as they reached the vehicles, as the agents were organizing the convoy back to the federal building, Elara's phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. She almost didn't check it, almost deleted it without looking. But something made her open the message. It was a photo. Marcus Chen, her old manager from Raphael's, the man who'd been on Calabresi's payroll. Except in this photo, he wasn't in Brooklyn. He wasn't anywhere near the city. He was standing outside a small house in the suburbs. And through the window behind him, clear as day, was a photograph that made Elara's blood run cold. A photograph of Rosalie's daycare, with an address as written in marker across the bottom. And below the photo, a text. Did you really think it was over? Christopher Reeves was just the opening act. The real show starts tomorrow. Tell Moretti I'll be in touch. And tell him that $5 million isn't going to be nearly enough this time. Elara's hand started shaking. Lucien saw her face. What? What's wrong? She showed him the phone. His expression went from confused to horrified to absolutely murderous in the span of 3 seconds. Everyone stop, he shouted. Nobody moves. Nobody goes anywhere. The agents froze. Williams jogged over. What's happening? Marcus Chen, Lucien said, his voice deadly calm. Where is he? In custody. We picked him up this morning after... Check. Right now. Verify he's still there. Williams made a call. 30 seconds later, his face went pale. He escaped during a prisoner transport 2 hours ago. We were going to tell you after, but Lucien was already moving, grabbing Elara's arm, pulling her toward his car. We're going to get Rosalie, now. Moretti, wait. Someone just threatened my daughter's daycare. Someone who knows where she is. Someone who apparently has resources we didn't know about. Lucien's eyes were wild. So either you come with us and help me protect her, or you get out of my way and let me do it myself. Williams made a decision. Everyone move. We're relocating the witness now. They peeled out of the harbor, sirens screaming, racing through the city streets toward the safe house where Rosalie was waiting. Elara sat in the passenger seat, phone clutched in her hand, watching the city blur past. They'd been so close to it being over. But the nightmare wasn't ending. It was just beginning. And somewhere out there, Marcus Chen was watching, waiting, planning something that made everything they'd just survived look like a warm-up. Lucien's hand found hers across the console. We'll get to her first, he said. I promise. Elara wanted to believe him, but as they raced through red lights toward their daughter, all she could think was that some promises were impossible to keep, and this one might cost them everything. The convoy screamed to a halt outside the safe house. Federal marshals poured out, weapons drawn. Lucien was out of the car before it even stopped moving, sprinting for the door. Elara was right behind him. The marshal who'd been watching Rosalie met them at the entrance. "She's fine. She's inside. Lucien pushed past him. Rosalie was sitting on a couch, clutching her triceratops, eyes wide with fear from all the commotion. "Daddy?" Lucien dropped to his knees in front of her, pulled her into his arms, held her so tight Elara thought he might break. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you. You're safe." Elara sank down beside them, wrapped her arms around both of them, felt Rosalie's small body shaking between them. They stayed like that for a long moment. A family, together, alive. But outside, agents were setting up a perimeter, checking sightlines, planning for an attack they couldn't predict. And Elara realized with sinking certainty that this night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Somewhere in the darkness, Marcus Chen was making his move. And whatever he had planned, it was going to be worse than anything they'd faced yet. The safe house felt like a cage. Rosalie had finally fallen asleep around 3 a.m, exhausted from crying and asking questions Elara didn't know how to answer. Federal marshals stood guard at every entrance, snipers on the roof, motion sensors in the yard, enough firepower to stop a small army. But Elara couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. She sat on the floor beside Rosalie's makeshift bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, one hand resting on the small of her back. The same way she'd done every night for 4 years, making sure Rosalie was breathing, making sure she was real. Lucien stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones to someone on his remaining security team. His face was drawn, exhausted, but his eyes were sharp, alert. The kind of wakefulness that came from knowing sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. Williams appeared in the doorway. "We've tracked Chen's last known location to a motel near the airport. SWAT's moving in now." "It's a decoy," Lucien said without turning around. "How do you know?" "Because Marcus Chen isn't stupid enough to hide somewhere that obvious. He wants us to think he's running, wants us focused on the airport while he makes his real move." Lucien finally turned, his expression grim. "He's coming here. This location is classified. There's no way he had access to Calabrese's network for 3 years. You really think he doesn't have contacts who can find a federal safe house?" Lucien crossed the room. "How many people knew we were bringing Rosalie here?" Williams hesitated. "My team, the marshals. Maybe 15 people total. 15 chances for a leak. My people are vetted. So was Daniel Reeves." Lucien's voice turned cold. "And he spent 3 years planning to destroy me. You want to bet my daughter's life that all 15 of your people are clean?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Williams made a decision. "We're moving you. Now. Different location. Smaller team. Need to know only." "Where?" "I'm not telling you until we're in the car." Lucien studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Smart." They woke Rosalie as gently as possible. She was disoriented, scared, clinging to her mother with both arms around her neck. Elara carried her to the car while agents formed a protective circle around them, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the darkness. The convoy consisted of 3 vehicles. Elara and Rosalie in the middle, car with Lucien and 2 marshals. Williams in the lead vehicle. Armed agents in the rear. They drove through empty streets, the city sleeping around them, unaware that somewhere in the darkness, a man with nothing left to lose was hunting them. "Where are we going?" Elara asked quietly. "Federal courthouse," Williams said through the radio. "Most secure building in the city, underground parking, armed guards, multiple safe rooms. If Chen wants to get to you there, he'll have to go through 50 federal agents first." "That won't stop him," Lucien said. "Then what will?" Lucien looked at Elara, at Rosalie sleeping against her shoulder, at everything he'd spent 5 years trying to protect and almost lost a dozen times in the past 24 hours, giving him what he actually wants. Which is? Me. Elara's head snapped toward him. "No. He's not after you. He's not even really after Rosalie. He's after me, using you to hurt me, using her to break me." Lucien's voice was calm, factual. "So I take away his leverage. I make myself the target." "Absolutely not." "Elara, we are not doing this again. We are not having the I'll sacrifice myself conversation for the third time tonight. Her voice shook. You don't get to play martyr. Not anymore. Then what do you want me to do? I want you to trust that we can end this without anyone dying. That's not how this works. Then maybe we need to change how this works. Williams's voice crackled through the radio. We've got a problem. Everyone tensed. What kind of problem? One of the marshals asked. Police barricade ahead. Accident blocking the intersection. We need to reroute. How long? 5 minutes. Maybe 10 with traffic. Lucien's eyes narrowed. It's not an accident. Sir, I can see the vehicles from here. It's a 4-car pileup. It's a trap. Lucien grabbed the radio. Turn around. Now. Mr. Moretti, we can't just... The windshield exploded. Not shattered. Exploded, like someone had fired a high-caliber round directly into it from close range. The driver jerked the wheel. The car swerved. Elara threw her body over Rosalie, felt Lucien's arms wrap around both of them as the vehicle slammed into something solid and everything went sideways, metal screaming, glass breaking, the sickening crunch of impact. Then silence. Elara's ears were ringing, blood running down her forehead, Rosalie crying beneath her. She tried to move, but the seatbelt had her pinned. Lucien? Her voice came out hoarse. I'm here. He was already moving, checking Rosalie first, running his hands over her head, her arms, her legs. Are you hurt, baby? Does anything feel broken? I want to go home, Rosalie sobbed. I want to go home. I know, baby. We're going to... Gunfire erupted outside. Not scattered shots, a sustained barrage. Automatic weapons lighting up the night. The marshals in the front seat were moving, one of them on the radio screaming for backup, the other trying to kick out the jammed door. Lucien pulled a gun from somewhere. His ankle, Elara realized with distant shock, and checked the magazine. Can you move? I think so. When I say run, you grab Rosalie and you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run. Where? There's a subway entrance 2 blocks east. Get underground. Call Williams. Wait for help. What about you? I'll buy you time. Lucien, no. This isn't a negotiation. He grabbed her face, forced her to look at him. He wants me, so I'm going to give him a target. But you need to get her out of here. Please, Elara, please. The gunfire was getting closer. She could hear shouting, screaming. The other vehicles in the convoy were under attack. I love you, she said. I love you too. Now go. He kicked out the rear passenger window, pulled Elara and Rosalie through. They hit the pavement hard, glass cutting through clothes, into skin. The world was chaos. Federal vehicles burning, agents taking cover behind whatever they could find. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. Bullets tearing through metal like paper. And standing in the middle of it all, backlit by flames, was Marcus Chen. He wasn't alone. 6 men with automatic weapons. Professional. Military-grade gear, the kind of firepower that said this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was an execution. Marcus saw them, smiled, raised his weapon. Lucien stepped in front of Elara and Rosalie. Run, he said quietly. Then he opened fire. Elara didn't think, just grabbed Rosalie and ran. Behind her, the gunfight exploded into full chaos. Lucien's shots mixing with federal agents finally returning fire. Marcus's men spreading out, using the burning vehicles as cover. She ran through smoke and darkness, Rosalie bouncing against her hip, her daughter's screams mixing with the sound of bullets and shouting. The subway entrance appeared like salvation. Concrete stairs descending into fluorescent light. She took them 3 at a time, nearly fell, caught herself on the railing, kept moving. The platform was empty. Last train had run hours ago. She set Rosalie down, pulled out her phone with shaking hands, called Williams. We're under attack, she gasped. Main convoy, east side. Lucien's still up there. We know. Backup's 2 minutes out. Where are you? Subway, Miller Street Station. Stay there. Lock yourself in the attendant's booth if you can. Don't come back up. Lucien, Yikit. We'll get him out. Just stay down. The line went dead. Elara pulled Rosalie close, both of them shaking, covered in blood and glass. Rosalie was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. It's going to be okay. Where's Daddy? The word hit Elara like a fist. Daddy, not Lucien. Daddy. 4 years of being a single mother. 4 years of telling herself that Rosalie didn't need a father, that they were fine on their own, that they were better off. And now her daughter was asking for the man who'd been in her life for less than 2 weeks, but had somehow become essential. "He's coming," Elara whispered. "He's going to be okay. He has to be okay." Footsteps on the stairs. Elara's blood froze. She pulled Rosalie behind her, looked around desperately for a weapon. Found nothing. Just empty platform and fluorescent lights and nowhere to hide. The footsteps got closer. A figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Marcus Chen. Alone now. His tactical vest torn, bleeding from a dozen places, but still standing, still moving, still smiling. "Ms. Voss," he said pleasantly, "we need to talk. Stay away from us." "I'm not going to hurt you." He took a step forward. "That was never the plan." "Then what is the plan? Kill Lucien? Take revenge for something that happened 3 years ago?" "Revenge?" Marcus laughed. "This isn't about revenge. This is about business." Elara blinked. "What?" Lucien Moretti made a lot of enemies when he started cooperating with the feds. Organizations that lost territory, lost money, lost people. Marcus took another step. They pooled resources, put out a contract, $5 million to anyone who could deliver him, alive preferably, so they could make an example. So this was never about me, or Rosalie. You were just leverage, a way to draw him out, keep him off balance, make him vulnerable. Marcus shrugged. The threats, the break-in, the texts, all just theater. Ways to make sure he'd do something stupid. Like sacrifice himself to save us? Exactly. And the Reeves brothers? Convenient patsies. Christopher really did want revenge. I just helped him along, fed him information, made sure he had the resources to make a move. Marcus smiled. When Christopher took the money and ran, it made Lucien look weak, made the other organizations think he could be pushed. That's when the real players made their move. Elara's mind raced. What real players? Everyone Calabrese used to keep in check, the families who were waiting for someone to take out the biggest dog in the yard. Marcus checked his watch. Speaking of which, your boyfriend should be arriving right about... The elevator doors opened. Lucien stumbled out, supported by 2 of Marcus's men. His face was bloody, his shirt torn, but he was alive. They threw him down on the platform. He hit hard, groaned, tried to push himself up. "Lucien!" Elara started toward him. Marcus pointed his gun at Rosalie. "Stay." Elara froze. Lucien looked up, saw his daughter, saw Elara, saw the gun. "Let them go, Marcus. This is between us." "Nothing's between us. I don't even know you." Marcus pulled out his phone. "But the people paying me do, and they're very excited to meet you again." He hit dial, put it on speaker. A voice answered, older, cold, vaguely familiar. "Is it done?" "He's secured. Witnesses present as requested." "Good. Moretti, I hope you're listening." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I'm listening. Do you remember me?" "No." "Think harder. 5 years ago, you were running from your father's debts, desperate, scared. You came to me asking for work." Lucien's expression shifted, recognition dawning. "I gave you a chance," the voice continued. "Brought you into the organization, taught you how this world works. And how did you repay me? By stealing my territory, by turning my partners against me, by cooperating with the federal government to dismantle everything I built." "Castellano," Lucien said quietly. Elara's stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. Victor Castellano, the man who'd run organized crime in this city for 30 years before supposedly retiring. "You took everything from me," Castellano said. "My business, my reputation, my legacy. And you thought I'd just let that go." "You knew about the federal deal?" "I've known about it for months. I have people in the bureau, people in your organization, people everywhere that matters." A pause. "But I waited. I wanted you to think you'd won. Wanted you to believe you were finally safe, and then I wanted to take it all away. So what now? You kill me?" "No, that would be too easy, too quick." Castellano's voice turned venomous. "I'm going to do to you what you did to me. I'm going to destroy everything you've built. Your deals with the federal government, your remaining assets, your reputation. And then, when you have nothing left, when you're broken and desperate and alone. Then what? Then I'll kill the people you love, right in front of you, so the last thing you see before you die is their blood on your hands. The line went dead. Marcus raised his gun, pointed it at Rosalie. Elara's world narrowed to that moment. Her daughter. The gun. Marcus's finger on the trigger. She didn't think, just moved. Threw herself forward, hit Marcus's arm just as he fired. The shot went wide, sparked off concrete. Marcus turned the gun on her, and Lucien, bloodied and broken, did something Elara would remember for the rest of her life. He roared, not a yell, not a shout, a sound of pure animal fury. He surged to his feet, drove his shoulder into the nearest guard's stomach, took the man down, grabbed the guard's weapon, spun, shot Marcus Chen in the chest. Once, twice, 3 times. Marcus fell. The other guard reached for his weapon. Lucien shot him too. Then it was just the 3 of them. Lucien, Elara, Rosalie, and Marcus Chen, bleeding out on the subway platform, staring up at the ceiling. You, Marcus coughed, blood on his lips. You were supposed to be broken. Lucien walked over, stood over him. I was broken. 5 years ago. When I left the woman I loved to keep her safe. When I missed my daughter's entire life because I was too busy surviving. He crouched down. But I'm not broken anymore. Because they taught me something you'll never understand. What's that? That some things are worth more than survival. Marcus's eyes glazed over. His breathing stopped. Lucien stood, turned, looked at Elara and Rosalie. And Elara saw it in his face. The realization. The choice he'd just made. He'd killed 2 men, right in front of his daughter. Rosalie was staring at him, eyes huge, trembling. Daddy? Her voice was so small. Lucien dropped the gun, held up his hands like he was surrendering. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry you had to see that. Are the bad men gone? Yes. Are we safe now? He looked at Elara. She nodded. Yes, baby. We're safe now. Rosalie ran to him, threw her arms around his legs, started crying. Lucien sank to his knees, pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. And Elara saw the most dangerous man she'd ever known break down completely. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. Above them, sirens were wailing, footsteps thundering down the stairs. Williams appeared with a dozen agents, guns drawn, taking in the scene. Stand down, Williams shouted. Moretti, step away from the weapon. Lucien didn't move, just held his daughter. Williams approached slowly, kicked the gun away. We need to take you in. I know. You killed 2 men. Yes. In front of witnesses, including your daughter. I know. Lucien's voice broke. I know what I did. Williams was quiet for a moment. Then he said, They fired first. You were protecting your family. I saw the whole thing on the security cameras. Lucien looked up, surprised. Self-defense, Williams continued, clear as day, both of you. He gestured to Elara. You saved his life when you knocked that gun away. And he saved both of yours when he returned fire. You're saying, I'm saying when this goes to review, my report will reflect what actually happened, not a execution, a father protecting his family. Williams extended his hand. Now, let's get you all out of here. They rode to the federal building in silence. Rosalie fell asleep in Elara's arms, exhausted beyond anything a 4-year-old should experience. Lucien sat across from them, head tilted back, eyes closed, hands still shaking. Is it really over? Elara asked quietly. Williams, sitting beside the driver, turned to look at her. Castellano's got warrants being issued as we speak. His organization is crumbling. The contract on Lucien's life is worthless now. He paused. But there will be trials, testimony, months of legal proceedings. What happens to Lucien? He honored his deal with us. Gave up his offshore accounts to Christopher Reeves, provided testimony on Calabrese's entire operation, and now he's helped us connect Castellano to multiple murders and conspiracy charges. William shrugged. Full immunity stands. He walks away clean. And the rest of them? The organizations that wanted him dead? Without Castellano organizing them, they'll go back to fighting each other. Lucien's old territory will get carved up by a dozen different players. In 6 months, no one will remember his name. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like loss. Lucien opened his eyes. That's what I wanted. To disappear. To be forgotten. Is it? Williams asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you spent 5 years building the biggest criminal empire this city's seen, and you're walking away with nothing to show for it. Not nothing. Lucien looked at Rosalie sleeping in Elara's arms. I'm walking away with everything that matters. Dawn was breaking when they finally finished giving statements. Elara sat in a federal office, drinking terrible coffee, watching the sun paint the city gold through bulletproof windows. Lucien appeared in the doorway. Someone had given him a clean shirt, bandaged his cuts. He looked almost normal, almost like a person who hadn't killed 2 men 6 hours ago. Hey, he said. Hey. Rosalie's still sleeping? Yeah, William's assistant set up a cot for her in the conference room. He nodded, sat down beside her. They were quiet for a long moment. Then Elara said, What happens now? I don't know. That's not very reassuring. I know. He rubbed his face. The federal deal means I'm protected from criminal charges. But my entire organization is gone. My assets are seized or given away. My reputation is destroyed. I'm starting over from nothing. You did that once before. Yeah, and look how it turned out. She took his hand. You're alive. We're alive. Rosalie's alive. That's not nothing. It's everything. He turned to look at her. But I don't know how to do this, how to be normal, how to be a father, how to be the kind of man you deserve. Nobody knows how to do those things. We all just figure it out as we go. What if I can't? Then you learn, you try, you fail, you get up and try again. She squeezed his hand. That's what being human is. I spent 5 years trying not to be human, trying to be something harder, colder, something that couldn't be hurt. And where did it get you? Here. He smiled, but it was sad. Broken and empty and loved by people I don't deserve. Stop doing that. Doing what? Acting like you're not worth loving, like you have to earn it by being perfect. She turned to face him fully. You're not perfect. You're damaged and violent and you've done terrible things, but you're also brave and loyal and you'd burn the world down to keep your daughter safe. Those things don't cancel each other out. They're both true, and I love you anyway. His eyes went bright. You love me. I've always loved you, even when I hated you, even when I should have walked away. I couldn't stop. Why? Because love isn't logical. It's not about deserving it or earning it. It just is. She touched his face. And I'm tired of fighting it. He kissed her, soft and desperate, and full of 5 years of wanting. When they pulled apart, he said, I want to do this right. I want to be a real father, a real partner. I want Rosalie to grow up knowing her dad isn't just some monster who shows up and disappears. Then stay. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You stay. You show up. You do the work. That's all any of us can do. And if I fail? Then you try again tomorrow. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. Okay? I'll stay. I'll show up. I'll do the work. He squeezed her hand. I don't know how to be normal, but I'll learn for both of you. That's all I'm asking. They sat like that, holding hands, watching the sun rise over a city that had tried to kill them and failed. 6 months later, Elara stood in her new apartment and tried to remember what the old one had looked like. The details were fuzzy now. The cracked tiles in the bathroom, the radiator that clanked, the way the floor sloped toward the window. This apartment was different, bigger, better heating, windows that actually closed all the way. Not luxury. Lucien's assets were still tied up in federal proceedings, but comfortable, safe, a home. Mama, can I wear my purple dress to school? Rosalie appeared in the doorway, already dressed, backpack ready. It's a little fancy for Tuesday, baby, but it makes me feel like a princess. Elara smiled. Then wear it. Every day should feel special. Rosalie beamed and ran off to finish getting ready. Lucien emerged from the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Elara, kissed her forehead. The gesture was easy now, natural. 6 months of showing up every day had started to erase the gaps. I've got a job interview this afternoon, he said. Yeah? Where? Auto repair shop in Brooklyn. Owner's an old guy who doesn't ask too many questions. Pays under the table until I can get my background sorted out. Mechanic work, Elara raised an eyebrow. Full circle? Seemed appropriate. He took a sip of coffee. Might not pay much, but it's honest. That's something. It's everything. They'd been having this conversation in different forms for months. About work. About money. About building a life that didn't involve violence or power or looking over their shoulders. It was hard. Harder than either of them had expected. Lucien had nightmares, woke up sweating, reaching for weapons that weren't there. Some days he could barely look at Rosalie without seeing Marcus's gun pointed at her head. Elara had her own demons. Flinched at loud noises. Couldn't ride the subway without her heart racing, checked the locks 3 times before bed. But they were getting better, slowly, together. "Daddy, I'm ready!" Rosalie appeared with her backpack and her purple dress and the stuffed triceratops she still slept with. Lucien crouched down. "You look beautiful, princess. Are you picking me up today? 3:30, right on time. Can we get ice cream? We'll see what your mom says." Rosalie ran to Elara. "Can we get ice cream, Mama, please?" Elara pretended to think about it. "I guess, but only if you promise to eat your vegetables at dinner." "I promise." Rosalie threw her arms around Elara's waist. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby." They walked to school together. The 3 of them, a family. Rosalie chattering about her friend's birthday party and the science project she was working on and 1,000 other things that made up the life of a 5-year-old. Normal things. Beautiful things. At the school gate, Rosalie hugged them both, then ran off to join her friends. Elara and Lucien stood there watching her go. "She's happy," Lucien said quietly. "She is. Because of you. You did this. You gave her a good life. We did this. Together." He took her hand. They started walking back toward the apartment. "Do you ever miss it?" Elara asked. "The power, the money, being someone people were afraid of." Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then, "Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep and the bills are piling up and I'm trying to figure out how to pay for Rosalie's field trip, I think about how easy it would be to make one call, get back in the game, solve all our problems. But you don't." "But I don't." He squeezed her hand. "Because that person I was, that person who could solve problems with money and threats, he was dead inside. He had everything and nothing. And I'm not going back to that. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, that's when it matters most." They walked in silence for a while. Then Elara said, "Williams called yesterday." "Yeah, what did he want?" "Castellano's trial starts next month. They want us to testify." "Both of us?" "Both of us. About the subway, about Marcus, about everything." Lucien stopped walking. "Are you okay with that?" "I think so. It's time to face it. Put it behind us completely. And if the defense attorneys try to make you look like accomplices, try to paint me as a criminal who got away with it, then we tell the truth. We tell them about a father protecting his family, about people trying to survive, about love being stronger than fear." She looked at him. "And we trust that the truth is enough." He pulled her close, held her right there on the sidewalk while the city moved around them. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For believing I could be more than what I was." "You already were more. You just needed to see it yourself." They stayed like that for a long moment. Then Lucien's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned. "What?" Elara asked. "Williams wants to meet, says it's important." They met him at a coffee shop near the Federal Building. Williams looked tired but satisfied. The look of a man who'd finally closed a case that had been haunting him. "Castellano's people are starting to flip," he said without preamble. "His entire organization is coming apart. We've made 17 arrests in the last week. More coming." "That's good," Lucien said carefully. "It is. But it's also created a problem." Williams pulled out a folder. "With Castellano gone, there's a vacuum. Different organizations fighting for territory. Things are getting violent. That's not my problem anymore. I know, and I'm not asking you to get involved." Williams opened the folder, showed them photographs, crime scenes, bodies. "But I'm asking for your help, your knowledge. You know how these people think, how they operate. If you consult with us, completely legitimate paid advisory position, We could shut this down before it becomes a full-scale war. Lucien stared at the photos. Elara could see the calculation in his eyes, the temptation, the old instincts firing. Then he closed the folder, pushed it back across the table. No. Williams blinked. No? I'm done. I walked away. I'm not going back. Not even to help. But people are dying. People were dying when I was in charge too. I just didn't call them innocent. Lucien stood. Find someone else. I've got a job interview and a daughter to pick up from school. That's my life now. He walked out. Elara looked at Williams. Sorry. Don't be. I had to try. Williams smiled slightly. For what it's worth, I think he made the right choice. Not many people in his position would have the strength to walk away. He's stronger than he knows. So are you. Williams closed the folder. Take care of each other. You've earned it. Elara found Lucien outside, leaning against the wall, breathing hard. You okay? She asked. That was harder than I thought it would be. Saying no? Meaning it. He looked at her. Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to dive back in, solve the problem, be useful. But you didn't, because I finally understand something. He pushed off the wall. I spent 5 years thinking power was what kept people safe, that control was the only thing that mattered, but it's not. Love is what keeps people safe. Connection, being present, that's what matters. You're learning. I'm trying. They started walking again, just two people moving through the city. Unremarkable. Invisible. Exactly what they'd always wanted to be. That evening, after dinner and homework and bath time, Elara sat on Rosalie's bed reading the same dinosaur book they'd read 100 times. Lucien appeared in the doorway. Mind if I join? Rosalie scooted over, making room. Lucien sat on her other side. When the book was finished, Rosalie yawned. Daddy? Yeah, baby? Are the bad men really gone? Lucien looked at Elara. She nodded. Truth. Always truth. Yes, he said. They're really gone. And they're not coming back? No. You're safe now. I promise. Good. Rosalie snuggled deeper into her blankets. Because I like this. Us being together, like a real family. We are a real family. I know, but before we weren't. Before it was just me and Mama, and that was good. But this is better. Elara's throat tightened. Lucien kissed Rosalie's forehead. Get some sleep, princess. Love you, Daddy. Love you too. They left the room, closed the door halfway, stood in the hallway trying to process what had just happened. She called us a family, Lucien whispered. We are. A real one. Not just people surviving together. An actual family. Yes. He pulled Elara close. Held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. I don't know how we got here, he said. From that restaurant 6 months ago to this. But I'm grateful. For every terrible thing that had to happen to get us here. Even the parts where we almost died. Especially those parts. Because they taught me what actually matters. She kissed him, long and slow and full of promise. Come to bed, she said. In a minute. I want to check the locks one more time. Old habits. They'd probably never fully disappear. But that was okay. They were both damaged, both scarred, both carrying pieces of a past that would never fully heal. But they were carrying it together. And that made all the difference. Later, much later, Elara lay in bed beside Lucien, listening to him breathe in the darkness. She thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago. Exhausted. Alone. Barely surviving. She thought about the choices she'd made, the risks she'd taken, the moment she'd decided to fight instead of run. She thought about love and violence and the thin line between protection and destruction. And she realized something. There were no clean endings, no perfect resolutions, no moment where everything suddenly made sense and the pain disappeared. Life was messy, complicated, full of people who were both heroes and villains, sometimes in the same breath. But it was also full of small miracles. A daughter who felt safe, a man learning to be gentle, a family built from the wreckage of everything they'd lost. Outside, the city kept moving, people living and dying and fighting and loving and surviving in 1,000 different ways. And somewhere in that enormous chaos, 3 people had found each other. had chosen each other, and were building something new from the ashes of everything they'd been. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and real was enough. Elara closed her eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, she slept without nightmares. Because some people don't belong to the world that created them. They belong to each other. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters.